He asked me to hold that to move ahead with everything else. He said he should be 10 minutes.
I'll move ahead with the fire department.
Yeah.
Only because I got them here at 6 o'clock.
Are we ready? Call to the order the meeting of the special work session of the Mayor and Council, Monday, November 6, 2017, 6 p.m. I'm your Council President, Tom Papaleo. I am standing in for Mayor Edward Mignon. He is briefly delayed. We expect him here momentarily, but he has asked that we move forward with the beginning of the meeting. There is no pledge on this.
No.
Okay. So we'll start with the statement. Sunshine Law. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in the Borough Hall, by email to the Ridgewood News, the records, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by the law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. I would like to remind all members of the public that we have 3 fire exits in the council chamber, 1 on each side of the dais and 1 at the rear. In addition to being recorded by both audio and video for the purpose of creating a record during the public portion of the meeting, if any member of the public wishes to be recorded or heard, they need only identify themselves by stating their full name for the record, and they may make a statement or ask any questions they would like. Madam Deputy Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mason.
Here.
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 Present. All right, we have proclamations and awards. We have first a proclamation declaring November 2017 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. Do we have anyone who will be accepting this? That's going to be Catherine. Okay, so we're going to hold off on the recognition, but I will read the proclamation. Does that sound acceptable to council?
Yes, sir. I don't know whether...
I thought she was coming, right?
Is she coming?
I don't know. So we'll read the proclamation.
Okay, she was feeling up to it. She was going to come.
Whereas pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest cancers and is the 4th leading cause of death in the United States, and whereas 46,420 people will be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer this year in the United States, and whereas when symptoms of pancreatic cancer present themselves, it is often too late for an optimistic prognosis, and whereas there is no cure for pancreatic cancer, and there have been no significant improvements in the early detection, treatment methods, or survival rates in the last 40 years, and whereas the good health and well-being of the residents of the Borough of River Edge are enhanced as a direct result of increased awareness about pancreatic cancer and research into early detection, causes, and effective treatments, and whereas the Borough of River Edge encourages the efforts and support national organizations such as the American Cancer Society, the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, and other foundations focused on research, treatment, patient services, and increased public awareness of this disease, and raising funds to support these causes. And whereas the Borough of River Edge further encourages the federal government and the medical research facilities to focus its effort on public policy and to support research opportunities and other funding related to developing effective treatments and a cure for pancreatic cancer. And whereas the Borough of River Edge encourages our residents, federal government, and medical research facilities to focus its efforts on public policy, research funding, patient services, and public awareness and education related to developing effective treatments and a cure for pancreatic cancer. And whereas the Borough of River Edge supports the families of any resident currently battling pancreatic cancer, as well as those who have lost their lives to the disease and are committed to nothing less than a cure. Therefore, let it be resolved that Edward J. Mignon, Mayor of the Borough, hereby proclaims, and I in his stead, Thomas Papaleo, Council President, the month of November 2017 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month. We have an award, but we're going to hold off on that, hoping that Catherine might be with us. we have a certificate of recognition for our fire department. We asked them if they could come forward at this time. I'm loud. Gentlemen, if you stand over here, and liaison, if you stand over here, you would be in view of the camera. That would be great. And I'll stand over here, and especially since Mike will pick me up then. Okay. Certificate of recognition presented to the members of the River Edge Volunteer Fire Department who acted above and beyond the call of duty by responding to a working house fire at 319 Howland Avenue at 2:40 a.m. on October 14, 2017. Because of their quick response and the efforts of all involved, the fire was held to a small area of the home. We would like to thank the New Milford, Paramus, Hackensack, and Oradell Fire Departments and the River Edge and New Milford Ambulance Corps for offering their assistance. On behalf of myself, Councilman Tom Papaleo, Councilman Vito Aquafredo, Councilman Alphonse Bartoloni, Councilwoman Ellen Bastide, Councilman Dario Canigo, Councilwoman Mary Davis, and our Mayor, Edward Mignon. So, Councilwoman Davis, our liaisons.
I just want to say what a fantastic job they did. I had my baptism as liaison when I was hopeful at 3 in the morning. I was like, oh my God, what do we do? Put sweats on and off I went. And George took me into the house. I saw everything in the structure, and we have to be very proud of our fire department and the Triborough and everybody involved. And Eric, Chief Schultz asked me to make sure that I mentioned that Chief O'Connell and Chief Polisi were first on the scene and got everything rolling. And they did an awesome job. I'm very proud of you, and I will make sure they get recognition.
Councilman Davis.
Thanks.
Before they go, our volunteers go out all the time, late at night, early in the morning, weekends, weekdays. Oftentimes they're called for smoke detectors and bad batteries, but they show up, whether it's a fire or a smoke detector or a CO2 detector. They show up, they keep and protect the citizens of River Edge, and I'm very proud, as I know the council is, of the hard work that our volunteers do. Thank you, gentlemen. Next on our agenda is the Borough Administrator's topic. Our first topic is Budget Manual.
Thank you, Council President Papaleo, if I may. We placed a copy of our budget manual in front of you. You can see that it was first issued some 27 years ago. It has not been updated, so this is something you may want to take a look at. But I gave you a copy of it just so you might be familiar with some of the sections. If you go to the table of contents, you will see that it lays out a budget calendar, a hearing schedule. It even talks about the notebooks that we've used over the years. There is a section 400 which goes to the advisory nature of the Citizens Budget Committee, and the manual has laid out the number of committee members, anywhere from 3 to 7. As you're aware, we will be appointing some of the Citizen Budget Committee members tonight. And I think there is one vacancy which you may want to look at in terms of filling or not. And we put some of the procedures in here for them as well. In addition, we have a chart of accounts. because this document is used not only for the elected officials, but for the departments themselves. So if a department is new to the process, they can pick up this manual and develop a sense of what forms and accounts are necessary to be responded to for the budget preparation process. We also detail the review process by the mayor and council. There are different forms that are submitted with regard to capital and revenues and salaries and wages. Those are all here for you to take a look at. This is information that comes into us during the preparation time. We also have a section 900, which goes to the summary forms that we use. Many of them you're familiar with: the homeowner effective tax rate, the tax rate information form, the calculation of the reserve for uncollected taxes. We provide you with a collection history, a revenue projection, the surplus history you're familiar with, as well as assessed valuation. So all those schedules that you've seen over the years really are because this is what was laid out several years ago in terms of our process. The next topic that we have on, I think I've touched on the Citizens Budget Committee already, but the next topic is long-term financial planning, and that ties into the manual to a certain degree as well. We gave you another document which has some information on it about long-term financial planning. It is a best practice recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association. That's nationwide. There is no statute or regulation which mandates that you do this type of planning, and frankly, I have to tell you that over the years, I've always been skeptical about it, because your planning is only as good as the assumptions that you make. So what will be our collective bargaining agreement? Where will assessments be? What will state aid be like in the following year? You have to literally make your best guess, and you know that impacts the result that you might have. But going through a process with the rating agencies this past year, I found that, and this is on pages 2 and 3, that they are very interested in seeing towns do long-term financial planning. And in talking it over with them and expressing my reservations, I came to the realization that what they're after is the exercise, is the self-examination that a municipality does of itself. They're not necessarily concerned that your results are perfect, but they want you to be introspective and to look to see if you have problems, and if you do, then prepare for that, you know, in any way that you might be able to. So, frankly, I can see the value in that, and I think it is something that we should undertake. Rating agencies provide a degree of compliance with that, anywhere from strong, standard, and vulnerable. If we accomplish this, we would be in the highest strong category, and it is something that they look at if you're going to be a AAA municipality. As you know, we are currently a AA+ stable community that has recently been affirmed with our last bond sale. And if we were to improve in certain areas, this being one of them, then we might be evaluated to be a AAA municipality. Behind that document, I have these financial trends, which we have provided over the last several years. And by showing you the past trend or history of a particular financial indicator, we have also put a projection down. So if you follow the trend, it might be a good trend, you know, this is something you want to continue, or if it's something that is on a course which is not that favorable, then there are certain things you may need to do. So in a certain sense, we have been doing some financial planning, but not as long or as extended as they would like to see it. Generally, they like to see anywhere from 3 to 5 years. There is, in doing some of the research on this, I found that New York State has a multi-year financial planning document which we could use as a template. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we'll take a closer look at this, and we'll work with our Finance Committee over the next several months and see if this template will work for us. This would allow us to look at our historical trends, the fiscal health of the municipality, and then come up with a fiscal improvement plan where we have certain concerns. So the goal this year is really to work on this long-term financial plan as a model document that will serve you well going into the future. And Mayor, I just wanted to report on our progress on this. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have on this topic.
Thank you. And I apologize for being late, Mr. Bodie. Mayor, we did the proclamation declaring Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, but we did not, of course, or do the award. We held off on that. We did the certificate to the fire department, and I think they're waiting for that certificate to be signed, or maybe later. And we moved through the budget manual and citizens budget committee and long-term planning. So we are up to for discussion.
Okay. And I take it Mr. Vernon had to leave. Mr. Vernon, yeah.
She did not.
Oh, she didn't come, okay. No, she wasn't sure if she was going to make it. We'll make sure she gets it. Can I just have a motion on the work section consent agenda? It's three contract with Costa Engineering, Fifth Avenue section for design and inspect agreement not to exceed $1,000. Event contract with Costa Engineering for the 2017 Riverside Road Resurfacing Program. Inspection in the amount not to exceed $500. An award contract to Costa Engineering for professional services related to DEP permits for compost facility in the amount of $5,000. So have a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Discussion. Swim club lease. I was asked by, I believe, the president of the board of the swim club, if the council would be amenable to modifying some of the terms of their lease agreement with the borough. You may recall that the borough actually owns the property, we lease it to the swim club, and we get some parking for the park in return. That's the general outline of it. There's no real dollars involved, except they did agree back when this was founded to pay the equivalent property tax of the assessed, well, it's not even assessed value, but it totals about $15,000 a year, I believe. They're asking to not have to pay the taxes, but they said they were willing to pay an equal amount what they're paying for the municipal portion, and wanted to waive the rest. But in that case, that means that the section they're not paying would be the county and schools, so it almost be like a mini pilot. They also want us to amend the rules that they can consider having residents outside the borough become sponsored members of the club as well. So I told them I had to bring it back to the council. I would bring it up for discussion. If there's a feeling that we want to pursue this, we can refer it to contracts, we do a subcommittee, or however we want to do it. Otherwise, we'll have to go back and decline. So if anybody has any comments or opinions,
Just, Mayor, just for the record, I recuse myself from any discussions. I'm also a trustee on the swim club.
did I present what they want?
I believe so, but like I said, I'm
Okay.
staying.
Mayor, can you talk to us a little bit more about, they want, I didn't follow it exactly. They want, what do they want to do with the property tax?
They want us to essentially, the
Forgive,
property should
or
be-
to forever
Yes,
end?
yes, and technically, the property should not be taxable because it's borough-owned property, it's exempt. But apparently when they formed this agreement back in 1962 or whatever it was, the agreement was that the swim club would pay the equivalent property tax as their lease, rent, whatever you want to call it. And so now they want to reduce it, they're looking to save some money, so they don't want to be paying as a property tax. They said they would give an equivalent amount of money to whatever the municipal portion of that is. So if the tax was $20,000, we usually get 25%. They want to pay the 25% and ask us to waive the rest. They had mentioned a case, something similar in Oradell, but I spoke to Mr. Anzadino, And he said that unless they transfer the property back to us, we really cannot just waive the taxes. But if, I said, if there's an interest in trying to work something out with them, then we can explore a little further.
Can I ask why?
They're looking to save operating costs, simple as that. They're trying to reduce their costs, and then by, you know, having out-of-town residents join, they're hoping to increase their membership. They seem to think that this is not a long-term decline, and these measures will help them recoup and go back to growing.
So when we get the taxes now, we then turn over portions of it to the school and the county? Is that what's happening?
Yes, it's paid as regular tax.
So then we would have to pick up that portion, or the school would just go on a shortfall?
No.
Well, no, the balance, if we waived it, gets spread over the rest of the taxpayers in the borough. But if we said we wanted to reimburse that part, which I don't know if is even legal, then we would have to pay that portion to the schools.
I don't have any objection to the outside the borough issue, but I don't know if I'm comfortable with the property tax concern at this time. I mean, they would like to come and present this. We own the property, we lease the property to them, they pay the tax because of the lease. I don't think that we can burden, I don't feel right now that we can burden the residents with, or through the school, failing to pay the school or the county. I'm inclined for outside borough membership.
Yeah, I had some reservations, and that's why I wanted to make sure that I brought it up here first before we even bring them in. If they want to come in, you know, we assume them under our insurance last year, the year before, which was a, you know, I thought a helpful gesture. And like I said, if there's interest in pursuing it, we can certainly ask them to come in. Or
So Mayor, how would the outside people affect the insurance? Would that change it anyway?
that I don't know. And there's some, I don't have the details on me, but it was some kind of sponsored, like you had to have recommendation by somebody, sponsored by somebody in the town to have the membership.
Why would they come to us and ask us for that approval to ask outside members to come in? Isn't that in their
Because
charter? Isn't
no,
that in their bylaws?
No, it's in the terms and conditions of the lease. I should have said that.
Okay.
It's one of the conditions imposed on them in the lease. Along with no food and a whole host of those other rules. It looks like most of them were codified through the lease agreement and not by the swim club.
I agree with Councilman Popolino. I'm not inclined to forgive, or whatever it's called, the property tax and extend the burden onto the taxpayer. So many of our taxpayers already pay their membership dues to the swim club. So I would not be inclined to move forward with that.
I think the mayor also makes a great point. We've already generously put them into our insurance, and I think we helped them a lot with that. If they want to talk about any other terms of the borough, the lease, outside membership or food or something like that, I would have no problems with the contract committee. I would recommend the contract committee consider that, but, yeah.
Okay.
I'd also want to, know that their membership at a meeting has had ample opportunity to discuss the idea of outside members, so we know what the membership feeling is before we move forward with that. So I'd want that information as well.
I don't know how, if it was just the board who decided, or
I'd like to know that.
that's certainly fair enough. So, talking about the motion be that you're willing to speak with them or refer to the contract committee. We're not in favor of reducing the fee amount or the taxes. We are willing to entertain changes to other operational restrictions and subject to them providing records of whether these actions were discussed to full membership.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. Thank you. Okay. For information, Mr. Sarlo, can you comment on the snow removal agreement?
Yeah, I've been talking to the attorney for the Board of Education on this, and we're kind of at an impasse, so I just need some direction. It's not more of a legal impasse, it's more of an insurance impasse. It appears our risk consultant, their risk consultant, have differing of opinions. Our risk consultant, their risk consultant feels there should be a mutual indemnification clause. We indemnify them for any work that's done. They indemnify us if there's any negligence on their part. I guess a mutual indemnification that in most of your agreements you've had with the board, that's how you've done it. Our risk consultant feels that because, and I spoke to him yesterday on this, Friday on this, because you are the borough's doing the work for free, they should be, the Board of Education should indemnify for any work that's being done. You know, it's snow removal, so there is a heightened risk of liability anytime there's snow removal and kids or people walking on it. So I'm a little bit of an impasse. They haven't really budged. I don't know if we should get somebody in the room from the governing body, somebody from the Board of Ed, get the risk consultants in there. There were some other, put a memorandum of understanding when you snowplow it, notifications. That's pretty much all in agreement between myself and them, so that would just be incorporated into the body of it. I just want to try and push this along. Obviously, we're getting into snow season.
Well, my discussions with them before it got to you was essentially, we're going to follow the recommendations of our risk consultant.
Okay.
And as we are really getting no quote-unquote benefit from providing the service, I don't know why we would be the ones to have to indemnify them as well. Plus, we were already been named in a lawsuit over snowplow. So I thought we had given them ample consideration to even continue doing this. And they said that's how I left it with them. They asked me as the borough attorney. He gave me his answer. I agree with that. And Mr. Soto, would I be correct that Ezio was not going to change his opinion?
No, he's pretty firm on it.
So we would be on record as going against the recommendation
of your risk management.
Yeah, I don't see how we do that.
So we would not be plowing because we don't have an agreement.
Correct. But they would have to then accept the terms as they are, because that's the agreement we approved.
Okay.
I didn't hear that last thing you said, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. If they refuse to accept that condition, then we do not plow for them this winter. And because the original approval we gave the school included those terms. So
I'm sorry if I'm a little slow right now, but are we changing the terms or are they changing the terms? They're changing the terms.
Yeah.
Well, Catherine, there's been a long-standing handshake agreement between the DPW and the schools for a number of years. And over the years, DPW has felt that they've been relied on more and more and more to do more and more and more in a quick amount of time. And since we are still trying to work out a master interlocal with them, we decided to put this issue in because they were very concerned about what's going to happen in the winter. I don't have all the details, but I know, and Alan can verify, we were named in a lawsuit that was based on somebody who fell. School board's attorney represented that they didn't do any of the work. It was the borough. So, again, you know, I think it's the attorney to say that that's not a good agreement if that's the way we're going to be treated. So they need the service. I certainly want to provide it to them because it's all our tax money. They're not going to be able to actually get anybody now through an RFP. So they're in a tight spot. But I don't know how we, as a governing body now, go over the objections of our risk consultant, and God forbid something happens, we went against his recommendations. So, unless there's no legal liability there, or I can't imagine there is if they're so intent on wanting us to do this. Have an opinion?
No, I think, you know, always no good deed goes unpunished, and that's where we seem to be currently, so we need to avoid that.
I wouldn't quite characterize it. I mean, I think they're in a similar position. Their attorney...
Yeah, no, I'm saying we did it for free and then we got sued.
Yes.
You know, so, you know.
And we were able to give, basically between Alan and John Lynch, we set the terms of when we're gonna plow, how we're gonna plow, the priorities and notification procedures. So we have all that stuff identified in the existing agreement that the board has not ratified yet. So,
If they were to reimburse us for our services, how would that change the indemnification impasse?
It's my understanding, Mayor, that it would, because as I've understood it, since there's no quid pro quo here, it's totally on us that there's no benefit to us. But that would change the situation. And if it was more of a global shared service agreement, other services were included, then yes, you might want to consider a mutual indemnification. Yeah, that I think that would change the perspective. Because this stands alone and because there's no quid pro, in the agreement itself, it's totally on us that we're looking for protection, should there be a slip and fall. If there's speaking with our risk consultant, if there was an auto situation where our plow hit an automobile, it would come on our policy, it would not be on their policy. And I'm not sure, you'd have to speak to our risk consultant as to whether you could even put you could divvy up the negligence areas, insurance-wise. And frankly, if we were going to come on their property and use their property without any sort of compensation or a quid pro quo, then I would expect them to ask for the same type of insurance and hold harmless that we are asking now.
Well, I mean, just as follow-up, I respect what the risk manager's saying, and I will not go against that, but I want to make sure that we're not pulling a rug out from underneath a member of our community without them giving them ample time to figure out what they're going to do.
Right.
So,
But-
is there perhaps an opportunity to do a short-term memorandum of agreement with them to get compensated for the services for this season, as opposed to having to walk away altogether? It's a thought. I don't know whether that's been explored. Possibly it has been. I don't know.
no, it hasn't been covered that way. The idea was to try to come up with equal consideration on both sides, so you didn't have to have the borough paying X number of dollars to do this and the board paying Y number of dollars to do that. But as a interim, that's perfectly a good solution. I think we would have to ask John Lynch to estimate what the rate would be. I don't know if it's the same that we use for the county or the condominiums.
I mean, I certainly am concerned that if it snows in the next week, because the weather's crazy enough that it could, I mean, I've got kids going to school, as do other council people on this podium, and, what's going to happen?
Yeah, but for a number of years.
I understand where we're coming from, I
Yes,
understand.
And it's not like they're incapable of plowing. They have machinery, they may not have enough manpower or equivalent manpower. And I think for heavier snows, their equipment may not be adequate. So, but I think if we have because the agreement, I think, started at 4 inches of snow. I asked them to modify it because John wanted to go a little higher. We got 5 inches or 5, whatever. But they did agree to go a little higher amount. So they think they can handle one small one. But I think we'll pursue what Councilman Bastide suggested. Ask Mr. Lynch to give us the cost, and then maybe Alan could directly interface with their business administrator and see if that's something they want to consider.
In the interim, I'll also talk to the attorney and tell him I spoke with you. This is our position, and why we feel that way. Hopefully they'll see it and sign it.
Can I have a motion on that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll just run running through some unfinished business, particularly with Councilman Alfredo or Councilman Belloni, make an update regarding the community center.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I've started to meet with the constituent groups. I met with library last week, and that went very well. I thought Darrow has been very good about getting me additional information regarding the groups that use the library right now, breaking it down into what are library-sponsored programs and then what are community-sponsored programs. And it's quite amazing the amount of groups that actually use the library and their meeting spaces that they have right now. Their main concern was parking, to make sure that there's going to be ample parking in the area. The architect was with me, and I did ask if he could look and see if there was any feasible way of adding additional parking. I met with Shade Tree as well, and meeting with them again on Wednesday to go over some concerns that they had. Just from their initial meeting, some of the concerns were the removal of the arboretum and what would be done with that. Particularly, I think there's 3 trees that have plaques that people paid to have the tree dedicated to someone. And so the removal of that, and also there was talk about regarding the canopy and replacing that, and how we could go about replacing the canopy that's going to be lost. But like I said, Wednesday we're meeting with them again to go over that. I met with SCORE today. I presented it to them. They also seem to like the drawing and the illustrations. Their concern was a stove. They did not want just a prep kitchen, they wanted a cooking kitchen. I guess the food that they prepare, they cook some of it on site, particularly I was told hot dogs. It was a very big deal, and sometimes beans. So they wanted to be able to cook that on site. And they also asked about parking, whether or not we thought the parking was adequate, and also given that seniors would be one of the main clientele of the facility, whether the 4 handicap spots were sufficient. Perhaps there might need to be a couple more. So that was one of their concerns as well. And then I believe I'm meeting with the Rec Commission this Thursday at 8. I did reach out to the Cultural Center, to Mr. Dunce. I have not heard back from him, and then he would be the last person to meet with. So it's, you know, for the most part, it's been received well, and just trying to deal with, you know, the little concerns. Also, SCORE had an issue. I guess they have storage items that they store at the temple, and they wanted to make sure that they would have adequate storage at the center. So, what was that?
Anything there, Councilman?
No, I think there is a couple of tweaks that we need to do to the floor plan itself, which you and I have discussed.
Yes.
But let's go through this round of public information to the various committee, and then be in a position to schedule a public showing, meeting.
That also, like Alan, update us again on where we stand financially,
Correct.
moving things and adding things. We need to have except from the beginning, we need to have a very, very good handle on what the costs are going to be, because we don't have much room for error in terms of the facility that's been designed and the money we have to spend. So, after the Rec Commission and Cultural Center,
That's
Shade Tree.
Shade Tree on Wednesday, meeting with them a second time. And then Rec Commission is Thursday, and then Cultural Center, and then that's pretty much the core groups
Okay, so
that we were
if-
focusing on.
If we have those finished, say by Thanksgiving, we should have the architect here on the 4th. On the 4th,
December 6th.
6th?
6th.
What day is the meeting on?
I think it's
4th. The 4th. We have a meeting on the 4th, we have a meeting on the 19th. The 4th and the 19th. So hopefully we can use one or both of those. But I think we need to be prepared to answer the questions that we've been asked, some of which I think we still had ourselves, particularly regarding to, cost, first of all, parking. We'll be asked about the impact to the trees and the rest of that side of Memorial. So I think it's, based on the feedback so far, I think everything is going to be addressable. I think everybody sees that the benefits here are going to be able to be mostly, or negatively, mostly mitigated by the positives. And I think everybody is actually pretty excited that this is actually coming to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, overall, the reception has been very, very positive, so. And members of the library board, said they were anxious to start to start programming it, so, it's been going well.
Shade Tree Commission, we have no updates with regard to Shade Tree. Mr. Solomon, correct?
Yes.
Can I ask something under unfinished business? I didn't see it on it was not at the last meeting, and I didn't see it in the minutes, but the community development block grant application,
Yes.
I know that you had reported that we will not, or maybe it was Alan, we will not be able to get programming for senior programming dollars through CDBG because of the new ways that they're structuring it.
Correct.
However, I did talk with Rob Esposito, the Director of Community Development for the county, and he suggested that rather than discarding those programming dollars altogether, that if we could look for ways to specifically enhance them or change them in certain ways, those dollars may still be available. So I was wondering if we could take a look at those programming costs and what we've gotten money for in the past, and perhaps see if there's a way that we can specifically tweak it a little. He felt that it would be worthwhile to pursue that. So my question is, have we moved forward with any kind of application, and if not?
Well, no, the applications are due, I believe, the first week in December.
Okay.
Well, if I may, we've undertaken a contract with Costa Engineering for these two applications. He has to prepare engineering estimates for Phase 4 on Oxford and Rutgers and the elimination of the Oxford Circle.
But we also talked about how we probably would not get money towards senior programming
Yes,
through those
and
block grants anymore, but maybe we could.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think the biggest bulk we got was, and we just got notification, did you get
1,800 for it. There's a
Yeah,
resolution on tonight for it.
We got, I believe, 32,000 this year towards the bus driver and dispatcher. We got 65,000, which fully funded our continuing of our ADA improvements, and I think the seniors was 1,800. The services portion of the CDBG pot is a small percentage of the overall, and like you mentioned, I guess this is coming from HUD in Washington. These rules have always been the rules, but there have been some latitude and some judgment allowed on the county levels. And now the criteria is if it's something that's funded through your operating budget, you can't ask for the money. You can't supplement it. If you hadn't asked for it before, you can ask for it for the first year, but if you want to continue the service and you have to pay for it, it becomes ineligible in the future. So the more people are going to try to push their projects more towards the brick and mortar ones, there's more money set aside for this infrastructure projects. The disadvantage we have is that we only have a very small area which is eligible for CDBG construction projects, and that is down by Oxford and Rutgers. So, it's one of those situations where we're not going to be able to get the full benefit anymore. But maybe they'll change that.
If we could look at what we got the $1,800 for last year and see if there's a way that we could tweak it and reapply and see if we can still get that money, I think it's worthwhile to do so, whether we include a wellness part to the program or something. $1,800 is $1,800 that goes towards the programming for our seniors, so I think if we can pursue it, we should.
It's 1,800, we don't have to put it up right so.
So I don't know if we can get a copy of what that, looks
Yeah, I
like.
don't remember, Alan, was it, you had the application from last year?
Yeah, typically, we've done bus trips, food service, basically entertainment or the instructor. So we'd have to look for something other than those activities. Wellness might be one of them, but if there's, I'd be happy to accept any other suggestions because,
Okay.
you know,
All right, you said December is the first week of December, the
The
application
9th, they had to be in.
Okay.
but since we're only allowed two, then you'll have to make a choice as to which one you won't do.
Yeah.
Go with that.
I don't think the funding is gonna be there to cover both of those anyway, so. And there's always, room to negotiate when we get to the committee level on the various projects. So now we can provide that to the council so they can look at that, so we have to make a decision probably for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Any other unfinished business? Full business. Discussion. Orders to repeal Chapter 79, Board of Recreation Commissioners, and replace it in its entirety with Chapter 79, Department of Recreation and Cultural Affairs.
Mayor, if I may start off, when I received the agenda, I didn't see this on it, and usually when I get the agenda, I go and look at my notes to make sure all my tasks that were given to me are completed for the next meeting. But I didn't see this listed. However, I went back and looked at my notes and saw that I was tasked with preparing my notes were not clear as to either a memo or an ordinance of repealing. There was not much other direction that was given to me except for the comments that were given at the public meeting. So what I did for you to complete my task was to prepare you a draft ordinance that you guys can work off of. And again, only the first part of abolishing the Recreation Commission, obviously, is easy, it's set by statute. But then the creating the second part, what I did for you was, again, incorporate any of the comments that were given, and I culled through a lot of ordinances and picked and choose, so I wanted to get you something that you can at least work off of. So, again, I usually get it to you way ahead of time, but I didn't see it on the agenda, but I saw it on my notes. So I was in Tennessee from Thursday to Sunday. I actually was working on it down there, and as soon as I got back, I wanted to get you something. So that's the background of why you received it.
And you were tasked with drafting the ordinance
Yeah.
to
Okay.
the United School
Here it
Committee
is.
Council. And we will begin discussion of it now. Obviously, because of the timing of this, everybody is suspicious or concerned, why do we look like we're doing this? And it really was a confluence of two events. Bobby's unexpected retirement, and as you hear, we're nearing completion or breaking ground with our community center. And hopefully it'll be habitable, I'm hoping, by early 2019, but we will certainly have to get programming in place and everything through the course of 2018. Under the current borough ordinance, my question to Mr. Sarlo several weeks ago was how, let me step back. The state statute that allows towns to create commissions is very specific in terms of how you create the commission, who's on the commission, how you appoint the commission, what powers do they have. And one of the powers is essentially, you interpret it as being absolute. It says, the Board of Recreation Commissioners shall have full control over lands, playgrounds, and recreation places acquired or leased under sections 4012-1 to 4012-9. You may adopt rules and regulations. You may appoint the director. You may suggest or recommend new officers or employees for that department. And the other thing, which I don't know if anybody ever read in the state statute, which isn't in our ordinance, the custodians, supervisors, and assistants appointed by the board while on duty and for the purpose of preserving order and the observance of rules, regulations, and bylaws of the board have all the power and authority of police officers of their respective municipalities in which they are severally appointed. They have absolute power. And the issue becomes, where is the generic term recreation going in the borough? I said the last time, and if people don't want to believe me, you'll have to make up your own minds, that I said Bobby's done a fantastic job for 24 years. This wouldn't be under consideration if she were still here. I think the commission has done a fantastic job too. They've done everything they were asked to do in terms of putting on programs and all the time they do put in. It's not about individuals. It's not about a title, quote-unquote, commissioner. It really is, to me, it's a testament to Bobby, because trying to figure out all her duties was not simple. And the duties of the director aren't specified in the ordinance, either the state statute or our own, so that's a little ambiguous. So to me, it's more of a question of process versus individuals. And my feeling originally is that the definition of recreation will be expanded tremendously. Recreation will not be just sports and some of the events we have now. It will expand into the programming of the community center, which can be any kind of, you name it, it can be there. Art, music, movies, lectures, classes, sports clinics. I mean, the list is endless. And ultimately, the direction and the accountability for constructing and operating this building, I feel, should be under the general direction of mayor and council, through a recreation director who will be appointed as a bona fide department head. There is no statute, or we have no ordinance that creates a Department of Education. Department of Recreation. This will create the, This will create it as its own department. It would be under the auspices of the Office of the Borough Administrator, which is a common construct. And the new committee would have many of the same powers, responsibilities, and duties that it has now, except you would not have absolute control. And absolute control has led to some issues, I believe, over the years. I think there's been I think things have been handled a certain way for so long. Nobody remembers how and why we do the things we do. For instance, the relationship between the commission and the CAC can be very murky at times, where sometimes it looks like the CAC is taking the lead on other things, and other times it looks like the commission is doing the same. The CAC is set up through bylaws, but the bylaws, if anybody read them, are, put it mildly, they're not in compliance with say, the Open Public Meetings Act or the Open Public Records Act, or even standard practices if the other two don't apply. The composition of the CAC, it's the council members are youth sports organizations and a representative of the commission who shall serve as a non-voting liaison. The director is not part of the CAC. I'm not saying she shouldn't be, or she had no right to be there, but by the bylaws, she is not a appointed member of the CAC. The Board of Trustees, they are made up of the heads of every league. And again, in concept, I think this works generally well. you do want to have their input, obviously, into some of the issues that you have to address. But the powers is that they have the authority to enforce the rules regulating the use of recreational facilities. They ensure scheduling set by the commissions adhered to, and they make recommendations to the commission regarding said usage. And they may impose sanctions on any member, including suspension or revocation of a member's right to use the facilities. I think that's a lot of authority for a group that's neither appointed or elected, where, again, in theory, I'm not saying in practice, if Regal for some reason had some sort of violation, CAC has the power to say you can't use any river edge fields. That's what this says. The CAC may call special meetings for any purpose. The meeting may be held upon 2 days' notice if given by telephone or in person, or upon 10 days' notice if given by mail. The notice shall specify the time, place, and date of the meeting. However, notice of the meeting need not be given to any trustee who signs a waiver of notice, whether before the meeting, after the meeting, or who attends the meeting without protesting the lack of notice prior to the conclusion of the meeting. Neither the business transacted nor the purpose of any regular meeting of the board need be specified in the notice or waiver of notice of such meeting. Action without meeting. The Board of Trustees may act without a meeting. If prior or subsequent to the action, each trustee consents to such action in writing. So, those really aren't rules, and again, it's the authority given what the statute or what our ordinances say. I think there should have been some clarification, because I think, and again, people will take this personally, it's not meant to be this way, but when if you have a commission member who's also on the CAC, there can be some divergent interest, to say, if you're advocating for your particular league, or maybe the Recreation Commission has wanted to take a different approach. We saw this go on with the AED issue. I know, and I remember, and I would recognize that it did take some time because the legal standing was kind of fuzzy. But if you go through the minutes and look at the reports, it was the commission actually saying to the members of the CAC, if you guys will do this, we'll go along. If you guys don't want to do it, no. That was essentially the way it went. And eventually, obviously, we did get in there. I think there's been issues with the borough not having, or I say the commission, not really having that direct line of communication or opportunity to interact either with the borough attorney, borough administrator, or the borough engineer for that matter. We've had several construction projects since I've been here where scope has been dubious, the monies allocated were never sufficient, and we wanted to pay a lot more money, or there were major, quote-unquote, unforeseen conditions that vastly affected the price of a project. Most notably, the lights at KGB, where it started out at $245,000, and after they realized that the soils by the river would be soft and wet, they sent a proposal to modify the foundation design at the cost of $250,000 to $60,000, almost doubling the project. When I asked if they did an alternative analysis, I was told basically that that's the recommendation they came up with, and there are no alternatives. Well, I know that wasn't the case, and at my prodding and Mr. Aquafreda's prodding, the consultant finally got his own engineer, and miraculously, that $260,000 came to $60,000. How that happened, I don't know, But had it not been for the oversight of Mayor and Council, it's likely that we would have paid much more for that project than we needed to. We saw the same thing with the Bogut Road Park. Many times, members of the commission have said publicly, and it's the orphan park. No one wants to take responsibility for it. Nobody wants to really control it. Rec said, we'll give it to beautification. Shade Tree says, we don't want it. Rec said, we don't want it. But under the ordinance and under the state statute, the commission has no choice. It's there under their control. In fact, you should have formally given approval to actually the tree farming. So, and on that one, if we remember, the Phase 1 project was proposed, and we were told the cost was $90,000. We had $104,000 in Bergen County open space funds. When the bids came in, it was $200,000. So obviously we rejected the first bid. The consultant recommended that we wait till the winter and rebid it when contractors are less busy. Contrary to that advice, presumably with the commission's approval, we rebid it right away, and they modified the scope in the hope that it would come under cost. And they did. But what did they take out? They took out removal of the fence. They took out removal of the asphalt. They took out the landscaping. And then afterwards, they tried to reinstate some of those things by change orders when you didn't award them in the first place. So it's a matter of process, and I see this new committee being more of a model like we have for the library board. We have the same commissioners who are on there representing whatever interests and whatever skills and talents they bring, but we should also include the library director, probably somebody from the schools, somebody representing the senior citizen community, because they all have interests in programming at the community center. So that's really it in a nutshell. If there were a way to modify the language of the existing ordinance to release some of that authority, we certainly would consider it. Mr. Sarlo says we cannot. If you are a commission, those are your powers. We cannot take them away. We can't modify them. So the choice is let things remain the status quo, or let's try this new model, see how it works. I don't understand, and maybe some of the members I'm sure will give us their opinions, and maybe I don't. I think that this is a greater opportunity for them, because it's going to open up so many more avenues to different kind of events, and certainly we want those voices and expertise part of that discussion. And some of the powers that would be retained by the committee would still have sole control over the trust fund. They'd have sole control over allocations for open space. They'd have sole control over what they prioritize in terms of grant applications. There are some other issues or some other clauses Mr. Sarlo put in where the director can't act without the advice and consent of the committee. So there is a little bit of a check and balance there too. So I think I think it's a great opportunity. I think it's something that is not intended for people to feel like they're being slighted, because it's not. It says in the statute that all 9 commissioners have the right to be appointed to the new board if they so wish. So that's in a nutshell, and I'll open up to any more comments. Yes, Councilman.
I don't know, maybe I'm being naive, but to me, you know, the whole thing has come up because of community center and also Bobby resigning. I think that the community center would bring a great deal of liability to the commission. I, for one, would be happy to not have that liability. I don't understand why, and I said this to Councilman Papaleo, I said it to the mayor, that I do not understand what the issue is as to why the commissioners would just not want to be on the committee doing almost the same thing if they have the passion for that. I mean, I'd never not want to be on a committee just because it changed its name. And I think I would feel better not having that liability. This is a huge thing that we're taking on with this community center, and it's going to have a lot of facets that
And
have to be.
along the same lines, you know, I know Bobby probably embraced the role, and she probably enjoyed a lot of it, but she's not intended to be a construction project manager either, and dealing with consultants and having to worry about punch lists and things like that. I would think that would be something that the director would not want to have to do, and not worry about maintenance of a big building and things like that. But at the end of the day, that's what the ordinance would dictate and what we would need to comply with. It's interesting because I've read through a lot of ordinances myself. I think about 50 of them across the county. And they were quasi alphabetical, but I did try to get a cross-section of different places. And out of the 40, there were different versions of what they consider a commission, none of which apparently are legal. So we have one town that creates the commission in accordance with NJSA 4012-1, that's the statute. But what it does is it removes the power in the clause that talks about having control over the lands. It's just omitted. So, but by law and statute, the commission still would have that authority. Am I correct, Mr. Sarlo?
Yes.
There's another one where they say the board shall have full control, but the mayor and council lists what they can have control over. Again, not really in accordance with the statute. We have another one that decides that anywhere there was a shall, they replaced it with may, as the board may control all parks. These are all called commissions. Out of, I believe there were, it's another one that was a modified one. A lot of them, some of them did cite the statute, some of them did not, but used the language of the statute. And the only two, there were two, out of two I found, that actually cites and codifies the statute as it's written. And what is the main, well, the creation of a commission is discretionary. The mayor, in his or her discretion, shall appoint the members and alternate members of the Board of Recreation Commissioners. Now, it's neither here nor there. That's an operational issue again. But again, the ordinance and the statute are what they are. The legislature has had ample time to modify the language as they had wanted, and there have been modifications as recently as 2011. They didn't change any of those major clauses. And conversely, on the borough's end, our original ordinance said that the commission may select the director, but the mayor and council enacted a standalone ordinance to make sure the commission had that authority solely. And we would not take that away. And again, I think at the being the body with the ultimate responsibility, that the mayor and council should have the major role in identifying and appointing the recreation director. There are vastly more towns that have similar to the model that's being proposed here. A lot of them do throw in either terms like cultural or arts or expanding what the definition is, because obviously when people think recreation, they think sports, and they should. Most people who partake of these programs are the kids, and they're sports active. So there's no, that's not inconsistent, that's not out of line. But I think that we have to make sure that it's going to be expanded and that all different kinds of stakeholders will have their, their little seat at the table. And the way we're doing it, or the way it's proposed, is the only way we can do it consistent with statute. Anybody else like to make a comment?
You want to go first?
Sure, you go first.
No.
You can go first.
All right. So it's my understanding, Mayor, and Mr. Sarlo, that there is no requirement by law that the community center be placed under the rec's control. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the rec.
I'll come back to that.
Well, I didn't interrupt you.
I'm sorry, you're right. I apologize.
Okay, thanks. So the argument that, in my way of seeing it, the argument that we need to do this so quickly, so immediately, because the rec center doesn't seem to hold water for me. It is not required by law that we put the rec center under the community center under the rec. And second, community center, I think is a great plan. I think that the Councilman Aquafredo, the mayor, and Councilman Barloni, along with the architects and engineer, have done a good job, a great job, in fact, with that. But we still have to find some additional funding for it. Hopefully, I think there is more than a good chance that we will be able to break ground in the spring, early summer. But it's not going to be open until, as far as I can see, for 9 to 12 months from now. So I don't see that there is an urgency in regard to the community center. Second, as general policy, I don't think that the council should assume more and more power. I think that it is much better to maintain the commission. I think empowering the members of the commission, especially since they are appointed by this body, specifically the mayor. I think that there is, they get a term, it's a limited term. I think they've done a phenomenal job. No one's come to this council and stood or sat in those seats and said, oh my God, the rec is doing a terrible job. In fact, I see the exact opposite. I hear over and over through residents that they think the rec is doing a great job. I don't think there's been a case made that the rec is either incompetent, because they're not, or ineffective, because they're not. In fact, I think the exact opposite is true. I think they are both effective and competent, and I don't see a justification for, and I think there should be. I think to take an action as significant as this, I think there needs to be a meaningful and strong justification. So I would be opposed to it. In addition to this, I think that there was one other issue. 1 second, please. With the replacement, it's my understanding that that the commission is open to working with the council, even though they would make the appointment. I believe we have to ratify. Is that correct, Mr. Sarlo?
For what?
Director.
On which?
Currently.
Or currently?
Yes.
Currently, it's there.
And we don't ratify it? But that's a standalone ordinance that we created
It's by state statute.
by state statute, so we cannot do that.
Correct.
But it's my understanding that they are willing to work with the council on that. And if they were to choose an improper or an ineffective or an inappropriate, we could at that time decommission them. So again, I don't see the need for this ordinance. And finally, my fourth point, is I haven't even read this, and it's already up for a first reading. I got it tonight as I walked in. Now, whatever reason that occurred, and actually I'd like to make it to the point, if I may indulge, whatever it is, I don't think we vote on something that the council has not yet time to examine. And I don't think we say, oh, well, we'll do it now and then we can debate it for the next meeting. I don't think that's the way it goes. And the fifth thing is I think that, that the commission, as well as the residents, should have some say before we have a first reading. I think we have an obligation, a duty, to allow the public to weigh in on such a significant change in the organization of our recreation department slash commission slash committee. And I think that we should hear well from the commission, and then we should think on that. So I think this is ill-advised at this time, and I guess the only reason I could only vote no, even if I was inclined to vote yes, because I don't know what's in this. And I don't know that anyone else on the council has had the time to do anything more than a cursory reading of it. And I don't think that that's how local government should work.
Thank you, Councilman. I don't want to get into an argument with you, but your attitude was very different when there was a different person sitting in this chair. 7-Eleven comes to mind and some other issues
Mayor,
where
Mayor,
ordinances showed
Mayor,
up
Mayor.
the night of the meeting already
Mayor.
for adoption or for first reading. So let's not go there.
I don't think that that's a fair argument.
Oh, it is.
You're basically saying we should do it because...
What I'm saying is that if the majority of this council...
Did you
authorized
agree
to-
with that when that occurred?
I would not have...
Did you agree with that procedure when that occurred?
No, I did not.
So why would you
No,
agree with it when it occurs
Because
here?
it wasn't even
Don't you
proper.
think that your argument is that... I apologize. I'm cutting you off.
It was
I'm sorry.
not proper. We came to work session, the mayor said, we should have an ordinance, let's have an ordinance. There was one ready, and we voted to introduce it. Happened several times. And it's on bond, there were a number of issues. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I want to go to the merits of your argument.
Okay.
So, under your beliefs, I guess, then, you don't believe the council should have any jurisdiction or oversight for major infrastructure projects?
No, I never said that.
But that's...
That's not implied either.
That's the power of the commission. So by saying you want them to stay that way... they
What
can-
infrastructure project are you referring to, Mayor?
I'm talking about park improvements, I'm talking about the tennis courts. I'm
Which
talking
has been
about
going on
the
for 24 years, and the council's been happy with it, and so is the residents of River Edge. So, I mean, you're making a rather extreme argument about something where you've been on this council for over 10 years, and I know you've had some issues, and I commend you for always standing up for your issues, and I know what cherry blossom they are, but in general, I think the commission's done a phenomenal job.
So in that model, we would have two department heads, somebody who would control rec programs and somebody else who would do the community center. And to say that recreation commissions don't program community centers is a misstatement. Almost every rec center, at least the ones in Bergen County, are under the direct supervision and part of the rec department. We don't even have a rec department right now. From the first day we came with this project, we always thought that the nice new office would be Bobby's. That's the way we always envisioned it. That would be the center of rec for the town. She was going to be there because rec would be in charge of overall programming and administering the center. The commissioners are appointed, and again, I'm not taking issue with anybody. I never said anything that they were not effective. I did not say they were not competent. I'm talking about we need to change the process. And the way the process works in terms of ordinances, we always list things for a first reading, and then you have time to review the proposed ordinance, and then there's a public hearing, and the public hearing gives people ample opportunity to weigh in and make comments. And again, you want to say we shouldn't take in power. It's not about power. It's about responsibility. It's about accountability, and the mayor council should have it. And I think the rec folks should focus on what they do best, and that's come up with rec programs and measure the programs and handle that. I think it's an issue of semantics, calling something which will have almost the same scope of authority it has now, that they're called a committee. I get the sense that there's something like demeaning or demoting or something because it's not a commission. We have an environmental commission where they didn't have a quorum for a year. If we go by your model, I mean, maybe beautification should not be a committee, they should be a commission. And then more people would want to work on it. I mean, let's just act on the merits. It's not a radical idea. It's not an uncommon idea. It's a very common construct in local government. And I'll leave it at that. Yes, Councilman?
Thank you. I just want to set the record straight, and if I'm incorrect, someone else corrects me, but Mayor, your statement that this body always talked about rec running the community center, I don't think we've ever all agreed to that. That may have been in concept, but I just want to be on the record that that was not an understanding that this body was behind until this time we see this. I also you mentioned that you're not trying to slight any commissioners. However, your discussion here, as the liaison, having worked with these commissioners for 2 years, I was offended by the way that you spoke about the work that they've done. And I know you said you think they've done a wonderful job, but you were criticizing a great deal of their efforts, and I think that that was...
I don't think that works. But don't
can
lob generalities at me. Tell me specifically what you did not like. If it has to do with the construction project, I stand behind that. I said that publicly many times.
There were several things that you said that were not constructive, and I think were belittling, and I just...
Well, if that was interpretation, I apologize.
What I would like to bring to this governing body's attention is that we are seeing this ordinance for the first time. I opened it up at 5 o'clock this afternoon. When I went to report to the commission 2 weeks ago at their commission meeting, I reported that a legal assignment had been given to Mr. Sarlo by the council to draft an ordinance to decommission the commission and create a committee. Not 12 pages of information that I was unaware of, that if I had been able to report to the commission and had a better dialogue with them, we could have talked about a lot of these things and possibly gotten more information from them. I feel that, Mr. Mayor, out of respect for them, you and the subcommittee should have gone to them well before we've gotten to this point to bring this to them. We gave the subcommittee, this governing body, plenty of time and opportunity willingly to come up with a plan for this community center. And now the commission and us is being given maybe an hour to comment on this ordinance. I'm not finished yet. I also believe that the commission is a reasonable group of people or residents who are willing to work with this mayor and council. And if this mayor and council was not happy or didn't feel that they were doing what we wanted them to do, the responsibility is on us to make sure that we communicate that to them. So given the opportunity and given that type of working relationship, I'm confident that this commission will deliver what this mayor and council wants. And I think that they have been incredibly responsive to the needs and the wants of the recreation needs of this community. So for that reason, and to echo many of what Councilman Papaleo's comments were, I'm not prepared to move this forward.
There's a little dichotomy or contrast there where you're suggesting that we should have brought the rec commission in earlier, but Councilman Papaleo said the rec commission should have no involvement at all. So you need to decide what model you want in the community center. You said it should be operated separately.
They should have been brought in long before, when the whole community center project was being scoped out and the subcommittee was meeting, and they were talking about programming space. The rec commission should have been part of that conversation early on.
They were surveyed, and the former mayor had done all that pre-work.
I don't want to talk about what the former mayor did.
But that's when the process.
Councilman,
that's when the process started. When we took it over, we did not reinvent the wheel. We proceeded from where we were, and the previous mayor, had his meetings and his survey and went all that on his own.
And you were happy to just move that forward and use that,
Well,
and now we're...
Because that was what we're gonna use anyway, and there was no reason to dispute what the former mayor said. He told us the groups, he had, Councilman Fred, you were there, when it was just you, he, and I, and that was the scope of it.
And we're all gonna have a difference of opinion, that's fine.
I respect that, but I don't appreciate saying that I'm trying to belittle anybody. If I did that, it's unintentional. I don't know what I said, and if someone wants to tell me, fine, I will apologize directly for it. That's not what I said. I'm talking about construction projects. I'm talking about, no clear lines of authority with regard to maintaining, operating, or even improvements.
You had an awful lot to say about the relationship with the CAC. You had an awful lot to say about those things, and I took it in a negative way. Was I the only one perhaps that took it in a negative way? And if it wasn't, that's my feeling and my opinion, and I'm not going to put that on anyone else.
Again, I wasn't criticizing the CAC. The ordinance allows for it. The difference is you have bylaws which are laughable, literally. That's what I was referring to. I didn't say anything about the CAC. I said that there was mixed jurisdiction and mixed priorities back and forth, and I think that became because they had a very comfortable relationship. There's nothing wrong with that. But my point is, if you have a commissioner who is also a representative of CAC, I'm not saying that somebody would not be fair and impartial, but it's just not, you are looking at sometimes some issues two different ways. There's no doubt about it. That's what I'm talking about. I keep coming back to it. It's a matter of process and a matter of procedure and a matter of authority. And you and I spoke. There's no way to modify the existing ordinance to meet the objectives that I think we need to make.
And we do disagree on that.
So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I'll just be brief. I'm going to just echo what Councilman Papaleo and Councilwoman Muscade said. I think it's a bad idea. It feels rushed. I would much rather have an opportunity to hear from the commission fully after I've had an opportunity to really digest this new statute. I've read through it, cursory overview, and I'd like more time to think about everything. And I just see no reason why we're rushing through this right now. Excuse me. I understand that we're coming up with the new community center, but again, I'm in concurrence with Councilman Papaleo that the community center may not need necessarily to be run by and under the auspices of rec. And again, I think that if that is ultimately how we choose, we should have a greater conversation about this and what is going to change the way that this town and its rec programs are run into the future. I think the commission up to today has done a fabulous job. I think overwhelmingly the people in this town are behind this commission, and I think this mayor and council should be as well. I think we should go back to the drawing board, and I think we should rethink what we're doing here before we take action that will alienate some very important people in this community who give a lot of themselves.
Mayor, if I can, just let me clarify the ordinance. There's two parts to it, and I think that's how you have to approach it. First part is, are you willing to abolish the commission and establish the rec department and the advisory committee? As you said, Councilman, I was tasked with preparing the ordinance to abolish it and creating it, and that was it. There's really no other specifics. So the second part is, for me as an attorney, is let me get you something as in-depth as I possibly can, so then you can chew it up and make changes to it. But I agree, you don't get to part two. You don't have the ability, and part two is establishing the advisory committee and their roles and responsibilities. You don't get to that unless you get through part one. So by saying that, we don't have enough time, or anyone saying you don't have enough time I 100% agree with you, and everyone there, that you don't have the time to go through the in-depth thing that I gave you regarding the actual committee. But I wanted to get this to you to foster this conversation so we don't, my time here, I've seen it drag over the years, not over the years, over a lengthy meetings, and sometimes we've seen in the litigation going on now, our procedural aspects have fallen off. So I want to just try and keep it moving forward. So that's the reason why it's a very in-depth thing. So the first part is, you don't get to the part two of the in-depth talking about it unless you guys are willing to move forward on part one.
But Tom, it's not written as two ordinances, it's written as one.
It is reading as one. You have to read it as one, but you don't get, what I'm saying is, you have to get to part two and to get to the in-depth of it,
Yeah.
we don't get to that part unless the mayor and council is willing to move forward to that. That's what I'm saying. The nuts and bolts, or I don't want to say is irrelevant, but they're the minutia of the ordinance. The overall of the ordinance is, are you willing to change the organization, change the structure? If you're willing to do that, then we can get into the minutia of it. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I don't want to get into a discussion of the minutia of it if the mayor and council is not willing then, to move forward to that. I think that's what I'm just trying to get at. I'm trying to separate the two.
As the way the law works, if we move it today, and then there's a discussion of minutia, the next discussion of minutia would be the day that we would be having the second reading and approving it, which means if there was even, if there were things we needed to change, we would then have to table it anyway, and, have it rewritten, and then it would have to come back. Or am I mistaken?
No, I'm not suggesting whether you want to move it or not. That's preference of the mayor and council. You can always list it for the first ordinance. The substance of this ordinance is abolishing the rec commission and creating an advisory committee. If at the second ordinance you wish to change some of the details of it, you certainly can and adopt it at that time, because that's not going to be the substantial changes. If you decide to go from 9 to 7, if you decide to go from 1 year to 2 years, the substance of this is changing the structure. I think that's just what I'm trying to get at. And that's your overall discussion tonight, and then whether you want to have a second discussion before that's your preference. I'm just trying to break it into two. You don't get to part two unless you get to part one, if I hopefully explained it correctly.
Any changes to part two would not significantly change the ordinance, in your opinion?
I may say it does, but
Why don't we
we're not there yet.
All right, so wait till we get to that.
Sure.
And with regard to it, I just want to say a couple follow-up things, is that we would have a work session prior to the next meeting, so if anything came up, if anything that warranted a retooling or whatever, we certainly would be able to not hold a public hearing that night. And there is a matter of time. In 7 weeks, Bobby's leaving and retiring. And we need to have a direction on the type and skills and experience the next director is going to have. They're one and the same. So either, if you don't find someone who has community center and regular rec background, then what do you go with? And you get somebody who's purely rec, and I'm sure whoever can do rec is perfectly competent to program things like a community center. But the borough should have the person who has the greatest skill set in both of those things. So I don't think we're trying to split things in half here. There's a fundamental direction the council has to decide about the community center. Is it going to be under rec in any form, or is it completely separate? And I disagree that it's not included, because it talks about physical facilities, indoor and outdoor gymnasiums and things of that like. So I don't see much of a difference between a community center that may hold say practice for golf swings or something, why that would not be considered a recreation facility at that point.
Well, that we could exempt, couldn't it, directly? No? Why not?
What do you, I didn't hear the question.
I said that we could exempt directly by ordinance, saying that this is not under the auspices of the rec commission, right? I mean, that doesn't run afoul of the statute.
And I'm not trying to argue, I'm just, then, who is it under? I guess is.
Well, maybe we
is the
need to
logical
create a
question.
new community center department, a cultural and community center department that's going to be in charge. I mean, look, let me just say this, and I just want to point this out. I think Bobby, an amazing job over the past years. I've been here for all those years. But I think that you're going to be looking to replace Bobby and possibly the rec commission with one person and do that entire job. I don't see that being tenable. So I think there are issues that need to be really fleshed out here, and I don't know that we've really had the discussions on them that we need to do, which is why I'm saying that it feels rushed. And although I understand that there is some urgency, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not disputing that, I just don't know that there is such a sense of urgency that we have to do it by January 1st. I don't know what we lose if we take an extra month or two to really flesh these issues
No
out.
one's going to be hired. That's the issue right now. Who has the authority? Right now, the commission does.
I mean,
Mayor, I thought
God
you said
forbid
that
something happened to
you-
Bobby tonight, what would happen?
I thought we
On the way
said
home.
two shared services.
Please. We're not trying to, wait. I'm sorry?
I said, God forbid something happened to Bobby tonight on the way home after this meeting, what would happen? We'd be in the same situation, so something would have to be happening, so maybe we could do something short-term to bridge the gap while we flesh these issues out. And again, I
But
still
again,
think...
but there seems to be a fundamental position that some of you are taking that does not want to link the community center to rec. But if that's your decision, the point is moot. Because what do you see as the negative coming from a commission to a committee? Where all the aspects of how the leagues operate, how all the rec programs operate now, how all the events operate now, all the policy procedures they can implement, they have the same level of authority they have today. They're losing, or we're retaking certain authorities, which would be hiring the director and responsibility, overall responsibility for improvement in terms of construction on the parks. That's really the crux of what the difference between the commissions and the committee. So you have to make your decision how you think this goes. I would never be in support of creating a rec department and then a community center department, having two department heads or having multiple people. We know that this facility will require us to hire people, no doubt about it. And again, we need to have at least conceptually how this will be organized. Rec is not even a department right now. So, again, I don't see the negatives in terms of what we're asking for the council to have responsibility and accountability for. Mr. Councilwoman.
I just want to go on record. I absolutely resent the fact that Councilman Papaleo and Councilwoman Bastide have made this personal. This has nothing to do with Bobby or the members of the commission. I am personal friends with several of them. They've done a wonderful job, and now it's getting as though if you happen to think it should be separated, you're against the people and the job they've done. I want to go on record as saying that is not true, and that you've done a wonderful job, and I thought naively that you would move to the committee end and continue to do that job.
Councilwoman Davis, I did not say that. No, you got your words, I'm going to say. No, you just accused me of doing something. I did not do that. I did not do that. I said they did a great job. I didn't say that the mayor impugned their reputation at all. I made an argument based on that there was no, at this time, meaningful reason to remove them. If they had been incompetent, if they had been this, if they had been that, then to change them, absolutely. That's the argument I made. I did not make it. So, Councilwoman Davis, I'm afraid I disagree with you, and by saying that, you just made it personal.
But you just said that, Councilman. You said that it were a question of competence. No one's saying this is a matter of competence.
No, and I agree.
But you just said that. You said it's not a matter.
I'm saying justification, in my mind, of making an action this significant would have to follow criteria that they were incompetent in some way.
That's your.
That's what I said. I said this is how I would see it. If I was going to vote for that, all right.
But again, I'm not hearing the major changes that we're talking about, how those are negative.
You keep saying it only does a very little. I haven't even read it. I haven't read it. I don't know. You might be right. Have you not in the past convinced me to change my position and my vote? You have. You have. And have I not sometimes convinced you?
Yes, you have, and I've said that publicly. But I don't.
I don't know what to say.
I know, but
Now, I
It's a
understand
concept,
what
and it's- and-
Mr. Sarlo is saying, that these are not he believes that they probably will not be substantive changes. But I think, especially since we just added a meeting in November, that it can't hurt just to wait. Listen to the commission, listen to the public, and then make some decisions. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not saying January. I'm simply saying I think that this is an ill-considered idea for tonight, and that's what I'm saying.
I've heard arguments that it's no good for tonight. I've heard arguments that it's not good.
In general, you heard me say that, and you heard me say privately and publicly that I don't see justifications for this. But if you want to convince me otherwise, why not have the debate?
I'm sorry, I gave most of the merit and technical-based points that I have laid out. I must have mentioned 20 different reasons why I think it would be a benefit. And if that's not enough to convince you, that's your prerogative. But again, I don't like making it personal. There's people on that commission who I consider friends. I have reappointed everybody who's come up for reappointment. I never asked to replace anybody. I had no desire to replace anybody. So to make it personal is unfair. And if it's particularly against me personally, I find that upsetting, yeah, because you know what, that's not how I operate. I've been doing everything I could from this chair to work with the council collectively, to work with all the borough groups collectively, and not try to make this partisan. How something like this becomes a partisan issue is beyond me, because it's not ideological.
I don't think it's partisan.
Oh, it is.
Vito's voting for it.
Well, okay.
Right?
3 out of 4, or 75%.
Well, okay.
Yes, Peter.
Because Vito recognizes not to concentrate on the individuals, but on the whole, which is a point that you're missing, and you're missing. We haven't criticized anybody here. The only first name I've heard has been Bobby McDonald because of their service to this community. And you guys over and over choose to mix and match to your likings. We're not ready to send them off to the gallows or something. Quite the contrary. This is our opportunity to streamline the entire process. This is our opportunity to make right of an ordinance that started in 1972 under the wrong auspices. And yes, the community center, guess who it belongs to? The Rec Commission. The community center is a rec committee function. It has to be, almost by definition. And who runs it? Who runs it? We're going to hire someone else to run a little 5,000 square foot community center?
6,500.
65, we're up to 6,500. So the point I'm trying to make, and please forgive my voice, the point I'm trying to make is simple. We're looking at the trees and we're missing the forest here. We're not doing this to screw anybody, least of all ourselves. They're the one that put us here, and we're the one that put them there. So what the heck are we arguing about? Political, non-political? Come on, do me a favor. Let's do something right for River Edge. Let's continue to do something right for River Edge. And that's all I'm going to say. So yeah, I wholeheartedly support this motion, and I wish we would have done it 2-3 months ago when it first came to mind. That's all. I'm done. Thank you.
Yes, let's go one last round.
It's not a round, it's a question.
No, I'm talking about, give everyone more opportunity to speak.
Yeah, okay, just a quick question. What's the practical effect of the wrongly worded ordinances that you cited to earlier?
I don't know, that's the attorney.
Right.
But I think.
And is there any
Well,
practical effect? Because, I mean, it seems like, let me
Because
just finish my question.
essentially, the power is still vested in the body, whether it says it in our ordinance or not. And our ordinance says it, so there's a difference there.
Well, I'm just wondering, I mean, you
Have
cited...
anybody even read the ordinances?
The ones you cited?
The existing rec commission?
The existing rec commission ordinance I have read in preparation for
to the
this
state
meeting.
statute.
I've looked through this new ordinance and have not given it its proper time, which is why I don't want to vote on it tonight. I also want to hear from the rec commission before any vote is rendered. But what I'm asking is, I guess, you were citing a number of ordinances that were wrongly worded when looked at the statute. And I'm wondering what the practical effect of that, because you spent some time on it, and I'm just wondering what consideration I need to give to that part of your argument in deciding this ultimate issue, why it's important, because I'm not seeing it.
Well, what I'm saying is because even though a council may think they took authority away from a commission, they really can't. So they always still have the authority. So when there's been suggestions here that we can modify the ordinance in certain ways, my point is we can't.
But our ordinance as it stands isn't in league with the statute, isn't perfectly in league, right? I mean, isn't that what you had said earlier, or did I miss that?
It probably could be cleaned up a little bit. I mean, it was drafted though in.
Right, so what's that?
It's mostly- it's-
1972.
And it's mostly, I mean, compared to some other.
But again, I mean, when you create the commission, your ordinance should mirror the statute, and the powers should mirror the statute. You cannot put in your ordinance less powers than the statute provides. If that's the case, my opinion would be they still have the powers that revert to them or that are vested with them in the state statute. You can, by ordinance, give them additional powers. Certainly can. If the state statute says they need to do A, B, and C, and they cannot do A, B, and C, like go out and buy land and spend, bond for it, that's a government function. But if you wish to, in something silent, and you wish to give them an additional power that the state statute, you certainly can do that. Hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, I think it was part of the answer. I think I know. I think I got the answer.
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilman Davis, any more comments? No. Councilman Ferrer?
No.
Councilman Papaleo?
No.
Councilman Bartoloni? No. Councilman Lubisky?
I just would like to add that we are facing Bobby leaving the borough in a few short weeks, but I don't want the impression to be out there that there haven't been conversations in the personnel subcommittee about how to deal with that in a short-term basis. So I don't want people to think that we have not been thinking about that and suggest that we have to move this now because we're going to be left with a gaping hole, because we have discussed continuity measures in the event that we are not prepared to hire a new full-time director. So I just want that on the record, that people are clear that we recognize that we're going to have a large void, but we're making sure that there will be continuity of programming.
But it does affect the type of candidates who may be interested in coming here, or the kind of job description we're going to prepare. That's why it's a fundamental choice. Is the rec department, if we create one, going to oversee the community center? We're saying back and forth, or not. And if it is, you need to do it under the auspices of the way it's been described. If not, then we keep the status quo. And that's why it's not being rushed. It's timely, and it's because right now we are in limbo because the personnel subcommittee cannot make any forward motion, and then I guess the commission can call for an emergency meeting and then do something. But at this point, nothing is done. Yes, Councilman.
Just, I have a question. Has the commission done anything in terms of looking to replace Bobby? Since, as the ordinance stands, it's under their jurisdiction. Have they done anything? Have they engaged any headhunters or moved the process along on their own?
They've known about this for about, what, a week now that we're having this conversation about the forming of this?
Well, no, I mean, Bobby gave notice around River Edge Day. So I'm just curious, have they done anything in that regard? It's not a criticism. I'm simply asking, have they been moving the process forward on their own?
I'm not going to speak for them. They're here, but they're.
I'm not gonna answer, but I will say this, if you don't mind, Councilwoman, how are they gonna do that if they really don't know the scope of the work, which goes to your argument as well, and I understand that, but how's that gonna?
They should be going with the belief the scope is now.
Again, it's not a criticism, I'm just trying to understand what's going on. That's all I'm trying to understand.
I have no answer for you on that.
Yeah, it wasn't a criticism saying, you guys haven't done anything, I'm just trying to figure out, have they done anything?
Well, it wasn't saying you were criticizing, it was saying.
Okay. If there's no more discussion on this, any other new business, what else can we do? Open to the public, and everybody certainly has an opportunity to speak now if they want, or they can wait till we get the main meeting so we can get some of our other business completed, but it's at your discretion. But can I have a motion open to the public, please?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Brosio? Oh, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carlo Ribosio, 201 Wayne Avenue. I'm currently a member of the Recreation Commission, and I must say that I'm very proud of the work that we've done during my time in the commission over the last 3 years, and for what I've witnessed as a resident during the 20 years before that. One of the reasons I believe we operate so well as a commission is because there's no political bias on the commission, which is great because we're doing what we believe is in the best interest of the residents of River Edge without consideration to how our decisions impact one political party or another. Honestly, I don't even know who on the commission is a Republican and who's a Democrat. Quite frankly, I don't care because it's totally irrelevant to how we operate and how we make decisions on the commission. Everything that I've heard from watching the video from the October 17, 2017 Mayor and Council meeting suggested that the reasons why the mayor wants to change from a commission to a committee is all about political control. We see the fact that we are not beholden to any political party in our decisioning process as a good thing, but apparently that is not seen as a good thing by the mayor and some council members. Some of the suggestions that were made as reasons to change it to a committee, such as the mayor and council should have input on who the new director should be, or a frustration with the lack of input that the mayor and council has on certain projects, in my opinion, are misleading narratives. Under existing ordinance number 1103, as it relates to the hiring of a new director, it says the Board of Recreation Commissioner shall select and employ, subject to the advice and consent of the governing body, a recreation director. So the mayor and council would not only have input, but would need to consent to anyone selected, and the commission would welcome and certainly request input before making any final recommendations to the mayor and council for final approval. With regards to the mayor and council having a lack of input on certain projects, that's just not true, as we consider all input before making any decisions, particularly the input from the mayor and council. So the real reason isn't about input. It's about political control and having the ability to make decisions based on the will of 3 or 4 people aligned to a particular political party versus the will and what's in the best interest of all the residents of River Edge. We respectfully request that you leave in place the commission structure as is, which has functioned very well and very successfully for over 45 years, doing what's in the best interest of all the residents of River Edge, and not just what's in the best interest of one political party or the other. Thank you.
Mr. Brosio, just a couple questions.
Sure.
One, if you haven't noticed, I don't have a political majority here. So to say it's political, I really find that a little insulting, particularly the people on the commission who know me personally. This is the last, why would this come up from a political standpoint? I'm an engineer by background, I'm an engineer by training. I've said 1,000 times from this day is how I problem solve. Gather information, analyze information, look at alternatives. That's what I did in this case, and the path I think we should be taking, this is the way we have to go. Period. It's not about you, it's not about any of the commissioners. I've said that time and time again. If we shouldn't have say as who's hiring, the hiring of the rec director, then who's to say we should be hiring the DPW director? Who's to say why should we have a commission appoint police officers? That's a specious argument. There's very, very few towns that would that have the governing body not appoint somebody. And to your other point, state statute doesn't say advice and consent. We added that in our ordinance. So that's just the difference also. So it does
And
not give us that.
the commission has never operated in a way that we're just going to do things without the input and consent of the mayor and council. Just has, it's never operated that way. And, you know, to try to push this ordinance through as quickly as you're proposing here, I don't agree with either. If you look at the last sentence in the ordinance that's proposed here, this ordinance shall take effect immediately upon passage. So as soon as
It's in every ordinance, we have to.
Okay, well,
It's a standard
so-
and everything. But, let me just give you
Sure,
a procedure.
go ahead.
If it's moved and listed for a first reading tonight, it gets passed. Then it has to be published. You need to have a second meeting where, that's where you have public hearing, thank you. It is then voted on. After that, then you have to publish it, and then it takes effect thereafter. So the wording says immediate, there's still a publication thing, but it's just a standard clause in everything. So that's all.
It just doesn't seem there's been sufficient time to have the proper discussion and debate about it before, you know, it's even gone to a first reading and
Again,
voted on here.
with all due respect, sir, the reason where there's a time limit also is because this plays into the kind of person we're going to hire. If you don't want to give that point any consideration, that's certainly your prerogative. But it certainly is a valid and a substantial consideration, hiring a new director. If you think otherwise, I appreciate that. We can disagree on it, sir. But it's not political. I mean, I don't see why it would be political in any respect. The same people who are there now will be on the new committee. So where's the politics? I just don't understand what's the fundamental difference between a committee and a commission that upsets the commissioners? And I'm asking you truthfully, and I'm asking you honestly, because I don't consider it anything lower or some other kind of demotion. We need to expand the scope of the rec commission to include these other entities out of necessity. So that's,
Well,
and I said, if you don't want to take my points, that's perfectly fine.
I would say the first point is that I don't know if I necessarily agree that it has to be that the senior and community center has to be under the recreation commission. There's been some points brought up that maybe it's separate, and I've heard contradictions in terms of, it sounds from your description, it's an awesome, major responsibility, this community center. And then Councilman Aquafrida, basically said that we're talking about a 5,000 square foot, 6,500 square foot building. It's not that big a deal. So which is it? Is it not a big deal, or is it this awesome responsibility that is so awesome that we have to change?
You're picking and choosing. You fail to recognize the impact that a 5,000 with a 6,500 square foot building will have on our community, where we never had one.
Right. No, and I'm
So
saying,
we're renting space, thank God, to the temple, Avodat Shalom, to where some of the functions of our seniors are taking place. So now you're taking the arguments and you're turning it fully your way without really understanding what's behind it.
I'm suggesting that, it probably is a pretty awesome responsibility.
It's
to
a
have.
huge deal.
Sure. And I think consideration should be certainly given to considering both options. Should there be somebody that's responsible for just the senior and community center, and somebody responsible for the recreation department? I don't think that's been fully discussed or debated, and it seems like it's it just, you want to push this through to make it under one body. Maybe that's the right answer. Maybe it's not. From my perspective, it doesn't seem like enough time and consideration has been given.
The fact of the matter is, this council is not going to hire two different department heads. We do not have the money. We're heading into the budget season with how many 100,000 in?
We've had $500,000 last year.
Already, and we haven't finished. So there are always going to be fiscal considerations. Consolidation and rearrangement, reorganization is appropriate. And again, I'm hearing why we shouldn't do it, but I'm not hearing how it affects the operation, how it will affect the committee or the commission doing the same thing, except for the two things I said, than you do now. And that's such an important part of the role. that it should stay a commission, and that's your position, fine, I can accept that. But I'm saying that, with all due respect, the path I see and how this has to change, I think that's what has to be changed. So we can agree to disagree, and I appreciate your comments, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Councilman?
No, it's fine, I can talk like
Mr. Lau? I'm sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here at the moment as a 50-year resident of River Edge. River Edge has been great, the best town I've ever been in ever. And it's a pleasure to live here, and it's a pleasure what we've done all along. There might have been a few faults here and there about the roads or this and that or whatever. But first of all, if we want to call it Recreation and Culture Center, maybe that's not right. This is all on the fast track, boom. It's very hard for me to adjust to something like that because I'm up in years a bit. But when I heard this, we're going to build a $2 million or $3 million cultural center or recreation or whatever it is, I was taken aback. And I said, oh my God, what's going to do the taxpayers, the local people here? I can't even afford the town now. But I got thinking about it, and I sort of simmered down. And I said, well, maybe this is the opportunity, because evidently you've been getting money here and there from various places and piling it up. But the public doesn't know anything about this. A week ago, we found out about this. Who has interest in the town? I don't want to question everybody individually, but I wonder really what's going on. That if you have the interest in the town, you'd be out to the public and discuss it. Recreation, here is the burden. You want to eliminate it tonight. We only found out about it a week ago. Our borough CFO reported they met with this group, that group, and everything. Nobody really met with recreation. Our liaison came down and told us. So really, if you're in the best interests of River Edge, you'll take this thing, it'll simmer, we'll discuss it. And remember, Mary Baker, you were here when they, young Mary.
Davis.
When they built the apartments down there, they paraded around in cars and everybody was in an uproar, right? Look at Chrysal's property down there. They're going to put condos on the way. Oh my God, you know? That's been vacant for 40 years. Finally, something's being done. And I can tell you, as a recreation commissioner and sitting up here on the mayor and council for 9 years, I was for the town. And you have to let people know. Are we in this zone now? We're bang, okay, we're going to pay for that. You don't have too many left. Your recreation center, you'd be surprised how many people go over to New Milford there. That's a county center. The people are all over. Do we have enough? It's like we put Cherry Hill School in. Oh, it's great, but now you have to pay for it all. I agree with you not to hire separate people and this and that. I commend you and your operation and thinking on all this, but it's got to be considered. Personally, is recreation what it should be called? I don't know the name, but why get two separate names in it? Cultural, we've had a house with cultural. More has been done at SCORE and the other groups around in town. I'm not criticizing the cultural center, but that's a little building with about 4 people. And here, you got them up here battling wreck.
No, see, there is no battle.
Well, there's no battle, but it's 50, it's 40 years that I'm in this. And
but no one's taking that away from
I know, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, but I don't have all the finesse. Also, when we found out about this, Ellen has been wonderful. I've been through a lot of liaisons. I don't know why they didn't put me out, but they did. But anyway, why not think about a temporary person within? Since we found this out, Bobby has taken everything of what we've done, and I think in your packet tonight, or the other night, you had information what's done on rec, besides me just running a couple of bus trips. And that we've tried to take care of all this already, put the dates in place, get the permits going, so it can function and continue into next year in a similar way. So why not try also, maybe someone on rec or something that's been involved with this for years, and I don't mean me, why not take them as a temporary in between to run this department, run it for a year, let's get all our thoughts together. And really, I appreciate everything done, I love this town and all, but sometimes it gets just a little twisted. There was an awful lot, Mr. Mayor, on CAC and all this and that, but believe me, if you didn't have some control of that, you would have a Donnybrook here. Because these people, they just go around you, they don't listen to you, and that's why you need rules. And some people don't want to abide by the rules, but we have to, so why don't those people?
My point, sir, was that they have the authority to change rules without notifying you, without even having a meeting. That's what the bylaws say.
Well,
I can't imagine that's how they operate,
Yeah.
but that's what it says.
Well,
And that was my point, sir.
No, I think it should be changed, because sometimes, I'm not criticizing CAC, but sometimes people don't show up, they don't tell you anything, nothing. Oh, we just went on, we want the lights. You know, we worked 10 years on those lights. Anyway, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you.
Mayor, just let me clarify one thing, I'm sorry. I don't, for the public audience, I don't get involved in policy discussions. The only time I interject is if I need to clarify a procedural or a legal issue. So just to clarify one thing that you mentioned, that the public does not have input on the ordinance. What happens is if the mayor and council decides to move this to the public for passage of a first reading, under the law, that's when it gets published and noticed to the public that there's going to be a second reading, and then there's going to be a dedicated public hearing on the ordinance. So that they don't have a public hearing before the ordinance is even moved to the agenda.
Mr. Sorrell,
I just wanted to clarify.
we were here, we had classrooms, we had drawings. Remember all this of what everything should go. We spent months, we drew pictures for parks, for cultural, for everything around. You have to, it might be the law, and the law is not correct all the time because you need prior input, you know.
I understand that, but I'm just telling you I'm just clarifying the law. I agree with you, the law's not always, I disagree with the law too sometimes, but I have to stay with it. That's all.
Yes.
Tonight, so there's no tension.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. So,
That's it.
Cheryl, ma'am.
Hi, Cindy Sherlock, 682 Bogart Road. I was on recreation for 20 years, over 10 as chairman. And I just want to clarify what happened. The Cherry Blossom Park, that was purchased by the council. Recreation had nothing to do with it. He did not want the project. And in my own words, it was like shoved down our throats to have to deal with. And there were a lot of things that were done behind our back, and then we were handed a set of plans and had to deal with everything. So that's just, and after that, we all know what happened. The CAC bylaws were written by the borough attorney at the time. And it was probably a 2, if not a 3-year project of us trying to put that together, to be able to get the leagues to work together. Plus, we were doing our maintenance fee from the leagues that they would have to do, so that each league would be able to know where the money is, who contributed what, and then be able to work together on it. And that was really what it started out to be. But those bylaws that you did read about the CAC were written by the borough attorney at the time.
They may have well been, but again, I was just making.
But I'm just saying that,
that was it.
you know,
I said it several times, I don't believe that's how they would act.
No.
I know
And
that's not how they
I
act,
didn't even
because I
think
know a lot of those
anyone-
people personally. That's
Honestly,
not
they,
about-
even though they signed off, I don't even.
And that was my point. And the larger point is, and I'm guilty of it too, sometimes we don't read all
Right.
the background.
Totally agree.
But I try to do, when I come to this dais, I try as hard as I can to do as much research as I can, to do as thinking as I can, looking at as much material as I can when I formulate an opinion.
And God bless you.
So, no, I'm not looking for accolades, but I'm just telling you that's the kind of person I have,
Right.
I've been, and that's the way I continue to be. And the issues, or the comments you made about the CAC, and none of that changes under this. So I guess
Then-
I'm going back to that, where's
My
the negative part?
question
So,
is, if it's not fixed right, why change it? And if you're just going to add responsibilities to the commission, to the director, then why are we even going through all this? Just under, recreation, put the senior center, or not. But to me, I had seen it happen in Ordell, where they went from a commission to a committee, and the mayor and council has taken control of that recreation. And have you seen those fields in Ordell? Have you seen Hoffman Field? Have you seen Grant Field? I mean, it's ridiculous the way they managed their DPAC field, because the mayor and council took control of it. And I don't know how that's going to be. You can sit here and say that's not the way you're going to run it, but now you leave, and now all news here, and guess what? We have control of recreation. We don't like what they're doing, we're going to change it. So my feeling being on recreation, we've had projects, and we've come to the council. I've been on projects that we had when Mayor Watkins was here. 3 times we had to come back and ask money for the Little League fields. And she got to a point where you're not getting another dime, figure it out. And we had to figure it out. And after that, we would not come to the mayor and council with our plans until we had every T crossed and every dot dotted. Now, there are unexpected things, and I'm sure in the beginning was with KBG, we knew there was a soil issue with the sand being down the water. There were going to be overruns. I don't know whatever happened after that. But the Cherry Blossom is its own little entity. But really, after those 2 projects, we were right on target with everything. And Mayor and Council, we are very open in communicating with you. And for you to come to us, if you had a concern with something, then come. The door's always open. We're always at what is it now? Not Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday of the month. Come to a meeting. Come to see. We meet every, if you have a concern. I mean, there were mayors that came before and sat in because they wanted clarity, or they just wanted to see the commission, to come and see what goes on. There's a lot of work and a lot of time that goes into recreation. And I'm, like you said, I got a phone call to come here. I'm supposed to be making dinner right now. But to just look at it, I think it would be good to have a discussion to find out what Rec's concerns are, what your concerns are, and what direction overall everything needs to go in. My feeling looking at this right now, and I've not spoken really to anyone, from recreation, but to me, it's going to be giving up control, because the council now has an opportunity to go in and say something, because they've gone from a commission to a committee. And if that's the case, then you know what? Why is Shade Tree still a commission? Why are they not a committee?
Well,
No, I'm just saying, I just don't understand. I know it's an opportunity, like you said, Mayor. Bobby is leaving. She's irreplaceable, as you said, and we're not going to get anyone. And with the senior center, but senior center, realistically, do we even think it's going to be 2019?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
We hope.
It's community center, it's not a senior center.
yes.
It's community, the community center.
60.
To
Yeah, and it's
give or
6,500
take.
square feet, in case I didn't say it.
I mean, we all know, but, maybe it is something, it always can get changed, and to your point, you're right. Even if you don't do it and keep everything the way it is, and that does come on, you do need to look for a director that probably has some type of background in that type of activity. So, That's my 2 cents.
Okay, just a couple, one point I would like to make. You had said that if it was a committee, that the council could exert control over it. But there'll be a bona fide department head, and I don't know how the mayor and council can.
Well, what is the department head? What, when
Someone
you say
like-
department head, what does that
Someone
mean?
who's got the same stature and authority as the chief of police, or a DPW director, or a library director. The rec director had no official standing in terms of the borough organization. It's not a department. There is no Department of Recreation. So that's where, and then the borough administrator's office is, in most towns, or probably all towns, by definition, the administrator is the department head of the department head, with the exception of the chief of police. Different administrators may work different ways, but that's generally the way it's set up. So it would be no different now than if you had a very influential liaison, say to W or someone else. I don't see that as.
So how is it set up now? Explain this again now that you're saying department head, I'm getting commissioners all, or director.
The director now is technically appointed and employed by the commission.
Oh.
And the mayor and council need to appropriate whatever you tell us the salaries. That's the statute. And we can give you some, we do give discretionary operating funds. If it was a department, the department head, again, would have more independent authority, even from a commission. Like you say, we don't know who would be on a commission in the future too, and maybe there's somebody who, or commissioners who may not work well. I can make the counter arguments all the time. And I think you can make the argument too that while institutional knowledge is a good thing, and the commissioners have long terms for a purpose, you have to look at the opposite too. So if you had people who sat on a board for 30, 40 years, and everybody was, is that a positive or negative? You know, you told it. It's how you, depending what angle you're looking at it from. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but what I'm saying is that I think what happens is for whatever reason, people feel this was directed for some personal reason. It's certainly not political. It's all about what I described several times already. So I appreciate it, and I know you did spend a lot of time on the commission, and I know you've done very, very, very well for the town. So it is appreciated.
Well, thank you. You know what, and the one thing I learned over those years is just being able to, everybody communicate. And, you know, like even Mary said, you're up here, you're all River Edge residents. That's all we are. We're not this side, or in between.
Exactly.
We're all River Edge residents. And if we all can come to the table and just find a happy agreement that everybody can work with, it would be.
And again, I don't want to get into the politics.
Nope.
And let's not talk about that park, but it's been a bane of a lot of our existences. And the fact that the Rec Commission doesn't want it doesn't relieve you of the obligation to take it out. Yes, but when recommendations were made about what to modify, they weren't taken. And then we see in follow-up memos and follow-up reports how the fence is dangerous. Someone's going to get hurt on this. We can't have that asphalt. Well, all that was in the original bid, but it was deliberately removed from the bid when we rebid it. So that's the kind of point I'm talking about. And
Now, I have a question on that note. So
And I can't
speaking
say-
of bids being changed and things coming out, don't you find, and we've had this in projects in the past, where we have our conceptual plan of everything, and then as the process happens, you look and go, well, maybe we don't have money for it, so we have to take it out. Or now that we see it, you know what, I don't think that's the way we want to go. We might want to take that out. So isn't that what happens? Has that happened in borough projects?
that's really not what happened, because the commission.
Well, I don't know what happened, but from what we're just
And
searching
again, I'm not commenting on the design per se, but the commission was involved with that. And but my point being is that if you know you bid something and you don't have enough money, why would you remove safety items or things that you need should be done so you can do other things? That's fine, but then I think you lose your credibility when you come back 6 months later and say, oh my God, it's so dangerous over there, how come we don't fix it? When you had the opportunity, we know there's limited resources.
Now, I have.
Well, I'm sorry, so, but when we went for the first grant, it was, like I said, it was, 104,000, 56,000. Before that project was even big, the former mayor asked you to submit a second proposal, and you did, and it was for $200,000. And everybody in this council said, there's no way we're gonna be able to fund a $200,000 project. But we did it anyway. We asked for, I forgot how much money, we got 50,000. And what did I do? I worked with Bobby, and we went to the county and used that money to go towards lights when we were short there.
Yes, thank
So,
you. for
no,
doing
it's not anything necessary, but I said that those are the practical things that sometimes have to be done. And what I'm saying, some of those things could be done much more simply, much more directly than they
Well,
can. And again,
I'm not gonna go into the cherry blossom with the
No.
vote, because a lot of things were done without our recognition. They were done, and then we had to sign off on things. So I'm not even gonna go into different era.
Yes.
So
I'm saying,
we're
but
going
again, that
forward,
was-
not going backwards.
Yes,
So
thank you.
that's all I wanna say. Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to make a statement, if I may, just real quick. As a Democrat on the council, I do not believe nor that this is a partisan activity. I do not believe that this was done for political reasons. I want to say that because I am a Democrat, and I do not believe that, as just as I said when before that Vito was voting with this, I don't believe that this is a politically motivated for a party purpose. And I want to say that publicly.
I appreciate it, Councilman.
No problem.
No offense was taken. We've had a lot of
No,
arguments up here, and I think
and they're good arguments.
we always seem to be able to get past them. And I'm sure when we're down in Atlantic City, we're gonna
Yes,
we'll have dinner together. So but I don't know. He said it, not me.
Wait, Vito, you're getting right home with me.
It's going with me.
It's going with you and coming home with me.
Yeah. Anybody else like to speak?
Let's go.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Ken Schopenhauer, 780 Millbrook Road. Not a member of the committee, commission, participant in the men's softball. Chance I might be running it in the spring, but who knows what factors will all play into it. But I don't know how this will all play out, and at this point I'm not even sure how it should play out. What I take issue with is the lack of transparency with the whole process. If you go online right now to the town website, you bring up the agenda for tonight's meeting, it still has whatever was put out initially, makes no mention of this process going on. And I think you owe it to the townspeople that put you in the seats here to at least get their take on it. As I said, maybe committee, maybe commission, but there are a lot of people who have a vested interest in, you think of recreation, it's supposed to be a feel-good thing, and you're dictating, and ultimately the town officials will have the final say, but at least bring the public into the process. Mr. Sarlo, I think, and I'll paraphrase and you want to take issue, part 2 is pretty much a boilerplate ordinance. I think you said, because you
boilerplate.
Okay, but you must have
It's
gone
12 pages.
Okay, all right, okay.
I go through a lot of ordinances
All
to
right.
come up with.
Sure.
But go ahead, I'm sorry, I don't want to.
Yeah, but, so you maybe you got the agenda off of the town website also, so you were not prepared. Just,
So in terms of the process, there was 2 meetings ago, Councilman Freda raised the issue. At the last work session, I raised the point. I asked if there was a motion to have Mr. Searle draft an ordinance to put it on for first reading. The vote was 3-0. So we had 3 people vote then to list it for tonight. It would have been on the agenda on Friday, but Mr. Searle said we did not have the ordinance. And when Stephanie said, what should I do? I said, we don't have it. So he sends it, and you can put it on, we can discuss it in work session. Because again, the putting out for the first reading is just that. It doesn't change anything. it has no force of law except following the procedure, how to adopt ordinances. It's a public, I would call it more of the public notice per se. Then this is it, and then when we schedule the public hearing, you can come back, everybody can come back again and make their points. But
And I don't know how the process goes.
no, and I don't.
Yeah.
but-
And I would think by the time you
and,
get
you know,
to the
it's-
second reading, it's pretty much a fait accompli that.
No, that's not true, because there have been times where ordinances have been tabled, or improperly tabled, but moved. There were times when we amended ordinances. So it's not always, doesn't have to be that. And again,
Again, I'm sorry, Mayor, but again, I only comment on the policy and the procedures of it is, if the ordinance is listed for first reading, okay, it would have been listed on the public agenda. Okay, here it's still listed on the work session agenda, where they're having a discussion on it, and before it's even listed, before it's moved from work session to public, and then again, public to the second reading. So, if the task was draft an ordinance, we're gonna put it on for first reading, and we would not, but it's also being discussed,
Yes,
it was being discussed at the work session, where usually when it's listed for first reading, it automatically goes right to it. So there's another layer here. Again, I don't comment on policy, just on the procedure.
It's just, I think it's a topic that should be more known. If the borough can let me know that, geez, tomorrow's election day, so I've got to get my recycling out a day early. Certainly, you could, something like this, it's a big issue. I've been to 3 council meetings in my life. One was to discuss the lighting of the hockey rink, AKA Dog Walk Now. One was a little dirt issue with the property and such, which we got through. And the other one was, I think for a short period of time, the town decided to make Bogart Road a one-way street coming off of Route 4. So, and I don't think, in the case of that one, it was once where the council just said, hey, this is what we're going to do. I think it was a council thing as far as when you decide how to change the roads. And the public wasn't involved, and then you talk to the people, you find out, hey, this is how it impacts people. And the commission, it's certainly going to be a different impact, but I think it will impact people. And you say it's not a political issue, it's not a political issue now. Going forward, you can't tell me who the people will be up here. Some faces might change tomorrow. I don't know. But you can say now it is not, but going forward, I think once it becomes under the domain of the town council, it's, that possibility exists.
But there's, you don't see, I was trying to explain how when a department head has a bona fide department, they're under the auspices of the administrator. Council can't interfere, no matter what people want to think, it doesn't work that way. So I think that the director also has some leeway with regard to their job, because if you have a commission and a majority of them, for whatever reason, don't like the person, or don't, you can have the same thing happen. So there's really nothing different in form or function that we're proposing, except about expanding the jurisdiction to cover a wider definition of what recreation is. Whether you want to cultural, you want to call it, I don't care. But the idea is that, and I said it before, when people think recreation, people think sports, because that's natural. But we need to get a wider array of options for people, and which will be done through the community center. And you need those stakeholders on a committee to have their input on those things. So it's not taking away from recreation, it's adding additional layers to it and expanding its reach. We have 2,000, 3,000 kids who participate in sports, that's great. We're hoping we have 2,000 or 3,000 adults participate in programs at the community center. So it really is how you want to look at it, from what side of the table you're sitting on. But, you know, I'm not questioning anybody's motives over there. So if you want to question, I said anybody's entitled to make their decision.
Yeah.
But, and all I can do is tell you what I think and how I feel. I don't think I've ever done anything else sitting up on this dais, if you've ever heard me. And Councilman Papaleo and Councilman Acofreda could probably tell you that. I lost a lot of arguments up here, but I always at least tried to get my point out. If you don't agree with it, you don't agree with it, and so you win some, you lose some. You hope that you can get somebody thinking a little bit differently sometimes. But on this one, I said, to me, my opinion is this is the way to go. I said it before. If you were able to change the existing ordinance to do what we wanted to do, we would do it. Not about pulling commission away or whatever they think the repercussion is. It's that we have no other legal mechanism to organize it the way that has been described. And if we say the opposite, if they're going to be completely divergent or separate bodies, different departments running rec versus cultural, or rec versus community center, then you can leave things the way they are. But then you need a mirror apparatus from committees on up to a department head to implement that. And I'm telling you, from a financial standpoint, I can tell you right now, it's not happening. It's going to be, we need to think long and hard about at least hiring, some staff in the budget next year to fill these positions. All these, Bobby should have, we would love to give her more people to work with. And as a department head, at least then you have a little more say when it comes budget time. So there are positives in that respect. You would have the rec budget would be a department budget. We wouldn't have to get this back and forth with DPW saying $9,000 is going to pay for field maintenance, and that comes out of their operating budget, but then they think it should come out of open space. We get into these things all the time between departments. That goes away under this kind of model. So like I said, there's pros, and I'm sure there's cons that I haven't thought of, but like I said now, what I think the objective is and what the long-term plan should be, this is the best way in the interest of the town we should go.
You had mentioned as far as that, and it's not feasible to have a separate community center, committee, commission, and a rec department because the funding isn't there, but you're already saying, well, we're going to have to budget to hire people to run the community center, so it's a little bit of a disconnect from what I'm hearing.
There's a difference from hiring an attendant versus a department head, and someone who's going to have the level of authority that they're going to need to run something like that. They're going to be a department head level. You're not going to pay them $30,000. That's what I'm getting at. And I said Bobby was always the one who was going to get the office over there, and we always thought, some of us, I won't speak for all of us, that was a good thing. She's in a terrible location now. We know this. We should have been able to move her somewhere better a long time ago. So none of this was done with the intention of slighting or hurting or impugning anybody. And I said it's a matter of process, a matter of how we can achieve what I think the goal should be.
Now, I know some towns with their rec departments, their directors are part-time. Is that something, because if you're adding responsibility, I would hope you're going with a full-time position?
Yes, because we have a full-time position.
I know you have a full-time position, but you're always looking to save money at any given turn, whether it be salary or benefits.
That never even entered my mind because, like you said, it's an expanded role, and I'm thinking as a department head. So no, that would not be something I would be in favor of.
Okay. Well, thank you. And as I said, just the lack of transparency is what I really hold my hat on today.
Thank you.
Anybody else? We can go into the next meeting, and there'll be 2 opportunities to speak again. Amenities. Congratulations, sir. I haven't seen you.
Thank you, sir. I'll be brief, I promise. Just a couple things. I know that it was addressed about, what has the rec commission the rec commission done so far to as a successor, and I think somebody already mentioned it, Mr. Robosio actually specifically, who I think spoke on behalf of the committee, but it does talk about it in River Edge's ordinance about the mayor and council having input into it, and I know it may not meet the state standard, but I don't know legally, which one we have to adhere to. If we have something, I don't know if that would be considered more strict on the books, if you could adhere to that, or if it defaults back to the state standard. It was mentioned that nothing would be done if Bobby was staying, but we're doing it now. So why don't we just tailor our needs for a new rec director to what you want to do with a community center and doing all the rec programs, if that's the qualifications that you're looking for? I don't understand why the commission needs to be dissolved in order to have that happen. And the last point I want to make is just about department heads. I know that while it's being said that Bobby's not a department head, I would think that most around the town would consider her the department head.
And I'm not saying otherwise. What I'm saying in terms of a formal position that we have codified.
Well, okay. But, and again, I think that she, not to speak for her, but I think she's on board with Mr. Robosio's statement. I believe he was speaking on behalf of the entire commission and her, who are against this. And traditionally, this mayor and council has gone to their department heads and listened to what their department heads' opinions are on things. And if this is what the department head is saying in this case, then, to go against that advice based on what the history has been with this mayor and council, I don't know. It's I don't understand it, I guess. So those are my comments.
Yes, and again, it's not meaning to be demeaning if I don't say that Bobby is a quote-unquote department. I'm referring to codified and in terms of the ordinance and the legal standing. And when it's codified and you're under the borough administrator, it's not the same as being under a commission in terms of who's your direct supervisor.
But she still does, I mean, more or less, and I don't know if Alan can answer this, but does she go to Alan for things, report to Alan for
That's why Bobby
things?
may, but whoever we get may not. And then you have to think about those things too. If Bobby was staying, we would have to figure out a way how we would incorporate this if that's what she wanted to do. She would have that right because she would still be here in that role. I would certainly not force anything upon her if she was still continuing in this. I don't think anybody would. But that's not the situation we're faced with. And the other point, I mean, it's nice that, we want to interpret the ordinance however we want to interpret it, but Mr. Sarlo told me, and said, if we're able to change the existing ordinance and get the same objectives, we would do so. We cannot. And that's really the crux of this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Motion to close to the public, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn work session, go to regular session.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We take 2-minute recess so I can just get a little water.
What you doing right now this week? We're back from Tennessee.
Really?
Yeah, we were in Tennessee. We left out Thursday night. It was 6-hour delay in Newark.
It's been a long.
Supposed to leave at 6. So we roll into our grade. Felt bad. They had 8 o'clock.
So they get like 3-4 hours sleep?
So we were there Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Flew back last night. Got back midnight last night.
We weren't missed, I was just holding out.
She's doing really well.
Really hungry.
This weekend on Friday, she has a visit with Levi.
Yeah, I was looking in like, but on the land use board have,
Let's try cleaning.
She's going to go to Boston.
Zoning board didn't come and reject out,
one more.
right?
And hopefully she
What?
Zoning board didn't come.
You see all this, right, if I remember right? Nobody cares. That's what I do.
I think the zoning board thinks about that. Let's have it.
You know, she wants, she's good.
Look, because you said,
Whoever's here.
Rappers?
No, no, you can.
You can. I don't know.
She wants to stay in
And
Northeast.
Boston, which means she will be living in Boston.
Hey, look, look.
But she, to her credit,
You can out seat. Sit next to you, right? Because you're with Thomas,
It'd
right?
be rough for us to.
You're with Thomas?
What's going on?
I'm trying to figure out who sits there.
Who sits here for zoning and planning?
Here?
Yeah, can't be represented. No, because Lou sits, I think, in Thomas for the land use board. So they can do something about that.
That's, yeah, right, that little girl? You know, how serious is that? You know, my son?
My sister always says, you know, parenting is like
Historic commission, I have nothing, and I'm on the council.
50%.
It's all here.
Because once they leave, your parenting skills transform into them making a
Hope, right?
decision.
Say,
That you're not going to be able to make a decision.
I don't know. Yeah, I usually don't need it, but we use it. Dedication's really important.
He walks in and says, Mr. Papaleo. Now, I know this is stupid. I bet with an 18-year-old walk in. Are we ready? Actually, in students now, who could have children ready school?
No.
Are we ready, Judy?
That's scary.
Good evening, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Mayor and Council for Monday, November 6, 2017. Can I ask everyone to please stand for a moment of silent prayer? And unfortunately, I'm going to ask that we remember a lot of people tonight, the victims of the shooting in Texas, the victims of the New York attack, and 3 local people, Harry Scherer, longtime repairer at the DPW, Vivian Fort, Felice, mother of former councilman and former freeholder John Felice, and Bill Watkins, the former husband, the husband of the former mayor Peg Watkins. Please remember that. Is Councilman Papaleo to lead us in the salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Borough Hall, by email to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law, the schedule including the date and time of the meeting. I'd like to remind all members of the public that we have 3 fire exits in our council chambers, 1 on each side of the dais and 1 in the rear. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Present.
Here.
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 Here? Here. Can I please have a motion to approve the minutes of the Mayor and Council regular meeting of October 2, 2017, and the work session meeting of October 17, 2017?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Abstain.
Staying.
Oh, you were there. No, you were there for the 17th. You were there for the second. Want to do them separately? Were you
Oh,
there?
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll split them. A motion to approve the minutes, the regular meeting of October 2nd.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
And a motion to approve the work session minutes for the meeting of October 17, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Did you get that, Judy?
I was in. What was it?
We now have another opportunity to open to the tonight tonight for items on the agenda. So make a motion, please, to open to the public.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You're open again if anybody wants to make any additional comments. There'll be another opportunity later in the meeting. Seeing no one else, motion to close, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Appointment of personnel changes. Again, with regret, we're going to need a motion to approve the retirement of Barbara Conway, Recreation Director, effective December 31st, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Oh, well, then we're done with this.
A motion, please, to approve the salary increase of Dr. J. Buckles, veterinarian, for the annual rabies clinic from an hourly rate of $75 to $100 per hour, retroactive to October 14th, 2017.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
A motion, please, to approve the salary increase of Andrew Sova, animal assistant, for the annual rabies clinic from $37.50 to $50 an hour, retroactive to October 14th, 2017.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
A motion to approve the salary increase of Brenton Freisendorf, patrol officer, from an annual salary of $55,074 to patrol officer 16 grade salary of $63,335, effective November 3rd, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approve the salary increase of Jason DeCarlo, laborer 2 in the Department of Public Works, from an annual step 3 salary of $43,489 to step 4, $43,985, effective November 5th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approve the resignation of Nick Tarabacchia, laborer in the Department of Public Works, effective October 25th, 2017.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
A motion to approve the salary increase of Kenneth Morse, tree trimmer 2 in the Department of Public Works, from an annual salary of $60,883 to $61,363, due to an increase in longevity from $480 to $960, effective November 5th, 2017.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approve the internship of Daniel Schwartz to the Recreation Commission through the end of January 2018, once a week, 4 hours a day, effective October 18th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the appointment of Kenneth Krautheim, Albert Rollman, Anthony Barbary, Constantine Krasusko, Teresa Esposito, and Anthony Arturi to the 2018 Citizens Budget Committee, effective November 2, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the salary increase of John Franson, part-time police dispatcher, from an hourly step 1 salary of $19.35 to step 2, $20.43, effective December 28, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approve the salary increase of Natalie Chape, farmer's market manager, from an hourly step 1 salary of $18.36 to step 2, $19.38, effective December 1, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the salary change of Thomas Decker, laborer 2, from step 5, $44,484 to step 6, $44,978, effective November 26, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the appointment of Vincent Chicolella?
One of mine.
Chicolella? Chicolella or Chicolella?
Chicolella.
Sorry? Chicolella, okay, we'll make sure I'm saying it properly. Vincent Chicolella is a member of the River Red Volunteer Fire Department, Junior Fire Auxiliary Squad, effective November 7, 2017. All in favor?
Aye.
I don't believe this is here, right? So, we have various pieces of correspondence listed on our agenda. Copies are available through the Borough Clerk Office if anybody wants to see anything specifically. We also have on file monthly reports from the Recreation Commission, August 2017. Fire prevention, July through September 2017. Tax collector for September 7th, 2017. Historic Commission, September and October 2017. Library Board for October, Beautification for October, Recreation Commission for September 2017, and the Land Use Board, September 14th and 28th, 2017. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ordinances listed for first reading. Madam Clerk, please read ordinance 17-25 by title, please.
Ordinance 1725, an ordinance appropriating $257,000 fund balance for the supplemental funding for the undertaking of various improvements to the River Edge Senior Community
This is part of the financial plan to have enough funding to move forward and build this community center. With the help of Alan, our CFO administrator, we were able to find balances in older projects where we've already had the money appropriated or authority appropriated, so we don't have to increase the overall amount that we've bonded. Is there a motion to accept this or adopt this on first reading?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I mean, I gotta do a roll call, I'm sorry. Roll call, please, I gotta do it on ordinances.
Yes.
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 Yes. And that ordinance will be listed for a public hearing at a future meeting. Ordinance 1726, Madam Clerk, by title, please.
1726, bond ordinance to authorize the undertaking of storm and sanitary sewer replacement on Knickernack Road, from Web Avenue to River, 5 for the Borough of River Edge, in the County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $200,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes, in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds.
And this is for funding for storm and sanitary sewer replacement on Knickernack Road from Webb to River Edge Road. It's a county road and we'll be reimbursed for that.
Yes, Mayor, I wanted to make mention that we will be signing an interlocal agreement with the county to be reimbursed for this. And we have a meeting on November 9th with the county engineer to discuss it.
There's an issue with us having to repair our storm sewer, our sanitary, and the county storm sewer is above it, and it's broken, so they have to fix it before, so they're gonna actually pay to do the whole project. So I think it's a good opportunity for us. Madam Clerk, ordinance 1727.
You want to need a motion and a second?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm really losing my head tonight.
Second.
Roll call, please. And,
Councilman Aquafina?
Yes.
Councilman Bartoloni?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilman Kuzma?
Yes.
Yes.
yes. Thank you. Ordinance 1727.
Ordinance 1727, an ordinance of the Borough of River Edge, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing Chapter 206 of the River Edge Borough Code entitled Fees.
And this is modifying our fee schedule for an annual renewal fee of $300 for second-hand dealers. A motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilman Aquafina?
Yes.
Councilman Bartoloni?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bastu?
Yes.
Councilman Kinico?
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis?
Yes.
Councilman Cavalera?
Yes.
Ordinance 17-28.
Ordinance 17-28, a capital ordinance of the Borough of River Edge, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, authorizing the construction of street, curb, and sidewalk improvements in Phase 3 in said borough, and appropriating the sum of $65,000 from Bergen County Community Development Grant Funds to pay the cost thereof.
This is to provide additional funding for a CDBG, Community Development Block Grant that the borough has received for curb and sidewalk improvement on Oxford Avenue. Motion, please, to adopt.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Aquafina?
Yes.
Councilman Bartoloni?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bastu?
Yes.
Councilman Kinico?
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis?
Yes.
Councilman Cavalera?
Yes.
Ordinance 17-29 by title, please, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 1729, an ordinance to repeal Chapter 79 of the Code of the Borough of River Edge, Board of Recreation Commission, and replace it in its entirety with Chapter 79, Department of Recreation and Cultural Affairs.
Your motion, please.
So moved.
For a second.
Second.
Roll call.
Councilman Aquafina?
Yes.
Councilman Bartoloni?
Yes.
Councilwoman Bastu?
No.
Councilman Kinico?
No.
Councilwoman Davis?
Yes.
Councilman Cavalera?
No.
You have to ask the mayor now. 3.
I'm voting yes to introduce, and like everybody said, when we have the public hearing, we have opportunities between now and then for people to offer constructive, I hope, comments on the details of the ordinance, and if there's a way to figure out to make every side happy, we'll certainly would do so. Ordinance for second reading this evening. Ordinance 17-23.
Ordinance 1793, an ordinance of the Borough of Riverhead, County of Bergen, and State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing Chapter 400 of the Riverhead Borough Code entitled Vehicles and Traffic.
And this is amending our traffic ordinance to change some parking restrictions on Continental Avenue and Bogart Road. I have a motion, please, to open to the public on ordinance 1723.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Would anybody like to make a comment or ask a question regarding ordinance 17-23? Seeing no one, we have a motion to close the hearing to the public.
Mayor, is it appropriate just to ask clarification?
Sure.
This is just codifying, this is not changing anything, this is just
Oh, this
codifying,
is,
right? Exactly.
is this correcting the error? I'm sorry.
I
let me
believe that
spell-
this is,
yes.
I just want it for the public, this
Yes.
is.
No, it was
correcting
codifying
error,
something that
codifying
was,
something.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's already,
You asked to ask for closing, no one is
Okay.
second, no one.
Motion to adopt ordinance.
No, you gotta ask to close.
Oh, I thought I asked. Oh,
I'll make that motion to close.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adopt ordinance 17-23.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Mr. Morgan,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Councilman Kenichi,
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis.
Yes.
Councilman Cavallari.
Yes.
And, the last one, ordinance 17-24, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance 1724, an ordinance of the Borough of Riverhead, County of Bergen, State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing Chapter 282 of the Riverhead Borough Code entitled Towing.
And this is to modify some of the fees and I think clarify some definitions that's in our towing ordinance when the borough tows vehicles during a snow event. We have found there's some items in there that can be interpreted different ways, and we want to make sure that if you're unfortunate to get towed, we don't want you to have to pay more than you should. Motion to open public hearing on ordinance 1724.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody like to make any comments or any questions regarding ordinance 1724? Seeing no one, motion to close, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Yes.
Mr. Bartolome,
Yes.
Councilman Deschutes,
Yes.
Councilman Kenichi,
Yes.
Councilwoman Davis.
Yes.
Yes.
We have a number of resolutions listed on our consent agenda. Resolution 17-340 up to 13-379. Any member of the council would like to have any of those pulled for separate discussion, consideration, and vote?
Yes, Mayor. Sorry. 17-368 and 17-369.
Those are emergency appropriations?
Yeah, I just wanted to discuss them briefly.
Okay. Let's take care of the other ones first.
Yeah.
A motion for consent for resolution 17-340 to 17-367, and then 17-370 to 17-379.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
One of them separate council, so. Resolution
Yeah.
17-368, emergency appropriation, and this was for the, was that the overtime for the police, was that for the?
I believe the first one is
That was the
overtime for the police,
That's for the police.
sheriff officers, and
For
the
the
police
kindergarten.
department, for kindergarten. So we are vouchering, to recoup some funds out.
Yeah, unfortunately,
We have to
when
pay
we
the
did the,
bill.
when we did the Kinderkamak paving project, it was of such a short time frame and such a large scope, we didn't even have enough police officers to man all the locations for traffic control. So the county brings people in continue to come back as a county road, and we had to pay rather high rates to reimburse them. No one's really happy about it, but at least we're gonna get a partial reimbursement, and we have to pay the funds before we even get reimbursed, is that correct?
We're gonna get them this year.
Yes. And so we actually have to appropriate the money for emergency orders. Emergency appropriation.
The reason I pulled it out, the two ordinances with the emergency appropriation, is simply that, to make everyone aware that this money goes into next year's budget. And while that's fine for now, our surplus policy does allow for the use of surplus funds for emergency situations. It's one of the specific portions of the policy. So next year's budget, I would hope we would all focus on perhaps adding monies from surplus to pay for these, rather than pass them off onto a possible tax increase next year. And that's the only reason why I was bringing it up.
I think we all agree. I believe between the two of them, I don't know how much we get reimbursed on the 150, but it's quite strong.
Oh, yeah.
We also know that, did we get the health benefit increases yet, Alan? Because I know
There's no increase on the rates, Mayor, but we still have to look to see whether there's coverage changes or different personnel.
That'll be a major relief if we don't have to worry about increases. But we all know that we're gonna have to pay for emergencies, we're gonna have increases probably for BCUA. We know that we're going to have to pay full for our bus driver if we want to maintain those services and accommodate all the step increases and salary adjustments that we're contractually obligated. So it might be a challenging budget, but it's always more fun when it's that way, isn't it? Can I have, are you okay with?
Yes.
One more time, 1730.
Yeah, no, it's the same, obviously.
Motion to adopt resolution 17-368 and 17-369.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Councilman Bartoloni, please read and move resolution 17-380, payment of the bills.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas vouchers for the payment of goods and services rendered to the Borough of River Edge have been received, and whereas each bill has been checked by the receiving department, approved by the Chief Financial Officer and Borough Clerk, and reviewed by the 3 members of the Finance Committee, now therefore be it resolved that bills as listed now be confirmed for payment from the appropriate funds as follows. Current account, $8,843,314.92. Capital account, $498,178.26. Recreation account, $3,775. Animal welfare account, $769.80. Self-insurance account, $27,274. Trust other account, $35,607.25. Open space account, $1,150.08. Trust other developers account, $11,464.24. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're ready to open for our second hearing to the public on any item or issue of concern. Motion to open, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody like to make any last final comments, ask any questions? See no one, motion to close, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Council comments. Here you go.
The library has a new website up, so I encourage everybody to go and check it out. Some great information there. I wasn't able to attend the historic committee meeting this month. I'll report next time when I get the minutes back. And otherwise, I met with members of SCORE this morning, got to talk to them a little bit, and it was pleasant as always. And I'm sure, despite all the little differences that we have, when the community center is up and running, it's going to be a gem in our community, and the seniors will get great benefit as the rest of the community will too. Thank you.
Let's wait for the chimes, or you want to go there? The floor is yours.
I also was at the senior meeting today at SCORE, and I will say that
Councilman Bartoloni did a great job in presenting the new community center, and I was pretty surprised as to how much input they had. They really asked some good questions, and it was a nice meeting. And also, we had our final meeting on Halloween of the farmers market, and I think that it was a great success. We only missed one day because of the weather, and the vendors all seemed to be happy, and in fact, the last day we got a new one. The fish is coming back, so I think it went very well.
Have more comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The DPW has reported to me that on October 24th and October 30th, the borough received high winds and rain. 5 trees were uprooted and a total of 26 limbs had fallen down. Minor flooding was experienced on the 24th due to storm basins. The basins were cleaned as needed. The beautification committee has met. They're continuing to work on getting us ready for Thanksgiving and the winter, and they're doing a great job with that. Also, the committee is working to look at its decorations for the winter and refurbish them, and kudos to Michelle Caridi and Greg Caridi for cleaning out the shed and keeping it up to date. The shade tree has met. They had several residents come and talk about bonding. They had a contractor come talk bonding. I believe a fair resolution was had by all. They also had a special meeting in regards to the community center, and from that meeting they have asked to meet with the subcommittee for the community center, and that, as Councilman Bartoloni had mentioned, is going to take place on Wednesday. And that's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Bartoloni. Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I already went through the meetings I've had with all the constituent groups regarding the community center, but I just wanted to read or just discuss. We received a nice letter from Sheriff Saudino regarding work that Detective Daniel Lee was doing with the Bergen County Sheriff's Office. He participated in a joint task force where they executed 65 chancery warrants and were able to collect $35,000 in child support arrears. And it's just a nice letter expressing the sheriff's appreciation for the efforts of Detective Lee. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And that's it. Oh, and everybody go vote. Remember to vote.
That's right, I'm not running, everybody go vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple items to report from the Recreation Committee meeting last week. They are establishing a service contract for the lightning detection system, which was not in place before. So this will limit the amount of money. Each time they had a call out for service, they had to pay individual times they came out. Now they have to have a service contract, and that's not going to happen. So that's a positive thing. They're getting ready to take down the AEDs for the winter and have them be stored. That's all I have from Rec. I just wanted to report on the prescription drop box. I had asked Councilman Bartoloni if he could find out the amount of prescription drugs that had been collected in the 1 year time since it's been installed. The police reported to him they've collected 215 pounds of medication in that prescription drop box since November. That's, as we say, a pill only weighs how much, so that's fantastic. Yeah. So thank you to the police department for making that available to our residents. And yes, please go vote tomorrow. Your vote is your voice, and it's your power, so exercise your right. Have a good evening.
Okay, have there been any issues or concerns with the AD policy and everything goes through the first year? At the risk of mispronouncing, I want to thank Vincent Chicoloa. Close enough. Thank him for volunteering. Like I said, we're always happy when, especially young people, join the fire department because they're always in search of new members. I had a incident at work which caused me to leave late, obviously when I was late here this evening, so I couldn't go home and get my other packet, but I had gotten a letter of accommodation from the DPW that I wanted to bring, and I'll have Stephanie scan it and send it to everybody. And if I could remember the details, I would tell them right now, but I don't. We can always report it next time. The Halloween parade was another resounding success. I mean, like, it seems there was even more kids than we've had in a long time. And unfortunately, the Girl Scouts couldn't muster enough scarecrows to have a contest this year, so we were disappointed about that. But better luck next year. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. we're having our Veterans Day ceremony over at Memorial Park there, and at 10 o'clock, Joe Ruggieri will be leading the service, and the classes from Roosevelt and Cherry Hill will be there. I think the weather's okay. If not, it'll be held inside the gym at Roosevelt.
I'm sorry, did you say tomorrow or Wednesday?
I'm sorry.
Wednesday.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Moving ahead. On Sunday, I know that at 2 o'clock at Temple Avodat Shalom, is a commemoration of Kristallnacht, and the rabbi has invited us to attend. I saw him last year, and I had to speak. It was a very, very powerful presentation.
When's that mean?
Sunday at 2 o'clock. And congratulations to Councilman Davis and the Farmers Market Committee for another successful year. I think we built off last year's success. We'll build more next year. One of the key anchors told me they were coming back. I hope that's in writing. And I think we'll be on actually having several more next year from what I've been told by other vendors. So good luck and congratulations on that. I wasn't here to give the certificate of recognition to the fire department, but again, I just want to add my thanks, appreciation, and commendation to the work that they did at that house fire on Howland last month. Again, it goes, like I said before, it's an insurance policy, and we're glad when something happens in the middle of the night that people willing to come out and either save your property, save your life, or bring you to the hospital, protect you. It's just something we can never be too appreciative of. And again, yes, Election Day. Good luck to my days mates and how it turn out. And I look forward to working with whomever is back up here. Like I said, we run into these differences of opinion. Sometimes they get a little animated, but like I said, I hope at the end that we always come back together and realize that at least we all think we're doing what's in the best interest of the town. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned.